For almost 4 billion years, the ocean knew nothing of predators. Life drifted, crawled, and multiplied beneath the surface, but nothing had yet evolved to hunt other animals with purpose. The oceans were already ancient before the first true apex predator appeared. Then, 508 million years ago, something changed. A new kind of animal entered the sea. It had no bones, no spine, no fins. Two large compound eyes sat on rigid stalks above its head. Two grasping arms lined with sharp inward-facing spines reached forward to seize its prey. At the center of its body was a circular mouth made of 32 overlapping plates, unlike anything alive today. It was the largest animal in the ocean. For nearly 90 years, scientists never realized they were looking at a single creature. Its grasping arms were cataloged as one species, its strange circular mouth as another, its swimming flaps as something else entirely. Other fragments were given different names again. Only decades later did paleontologists discover they all belonged to one extraordinary animal, Anomalocaris, the first apex predator the ocean had ever produced. But its reign did not last. None of them do. Across more than 500 million years, the ocean has crowned a succession of apex predators, unlike one another in almost every way. Some were invertebrates, some were fish, some were enormous marine reptiles. One had only recently been walking on land before returning to the sea. Every one of them ruled for millions of years. Every one of them disappeared, not because something stronger defeated them, because the ocean itself changed beneath them. Again and again, shifting climates, changing sea levels, altered chemistry, and mass extinctions erased the rulers of one age before opening the door for something entirely different. And each new ruler came from an animal that had once lived beneath the one before it. The strangest part of the story is where it ends. The apex predator ruling today's oceans is not the largest animal to have held the throne. It does not have the strongest bite. It does not wear the heaviest armor. Instead, it dominates through something no previous ocean predator ever possessed: culture, knowledge passed from one generation to the next. If you enjoy this kind of content, a like and subscribe helps more people find it. And I'm curious, what brought you here tonight? Can't sleep, or just love this kind of thing? Let me know in the comments. Now, let's return to the beginning of ocean predation. Nothing in this story unfolds against a fixed stage. The water itself is always in motion, carrying heat across the globe, dissolving minerals from ancient mountains, gathering oxygen from the air above, and reshaping coastlines over spans of time so immense that entire mountain ranges rise and wear away between one chapter and the next. Every predator that ever reached the summit of the marine world inherited an ocean already transformed by forces far older than life itself. A slight shift in temperature could change everything. During warmer ages, seas expanded across the continents, creating broad, sunlit shelves rich with algae, drifting plankton, and countless small animals. Energy flowed upward through these crowded food webs, allowing larger bodies, faster metabolisms, and new hunting strategies to emerge. Cooler intervals brought a different rhythm. Habitats contracted, growing seasons shortened, and many creatures adapted by becoming smaller, slower, or more specialized for survival within narrower ecological limits. Another invisible boundary drifted through the water alongside temperature. Every breath taken beneath the waves depends upon oxygen dissolved into seawater. When that supply remained abundant, active hunters could chase prey across long distances and sustain demanding lifestyles. As oxygen declined, endurance faded. Large predators required more energy than the environment could provide, leaving room for smaller animals that demanded less from the sea around them. Entire dynasties rose or vanished because of changes no eye could ever witness directly. Sea levels shaped the living world just as profoundly. Rising oceans flooded low-lying continental margins, producing immense shallow seas where sunlight reached the bottom and life flourished from the seafloor to the surface. These regions became vast hunting grounds filled with shellfish, fish, and swimming reptiles across different ages. When the water retreated, those thriving habitats disappeared. Coastlines advanced outward, ecosystems fractured, and predators that had mastered broad inland seas often found themselves without the abundance that had sustained their reign. Even the chemistry of seawater guided the design of life. The balance of dissolved minerals determined whether shells, reefs, and heavy armor could form with ease, or became increasingly difficult to build. When sturdy protective structures spread through marine communities, predators responded by developing stronger jaws, sharper cutting edges, crushing teeth, or entirely different methods of attack. Every improvement in defense encouraged a fresh innovation in offense, weaving an endless conversation between hunter and hunted that continued for hundreds of millions of years. The arrangement of the continents altered that conversation once again. At times, nearly every major landmass joined together, surrounding a single immense ocean whose currents carried heat along familiar paths. Later, those continents drifted apart, opening new seaways and redirecting circulation across the planet. Warm currents wandered into unfamiliar regions. Colder water reached places it never had before, and marine ecosystems reorganized around entirely new patterns of climate and productivity. Predators did not command these changes. They adapted to them until adaptation was no longer enough. Their importance extended far beyond their size. An apex predator influenced every layer beneath it. Its hunting determined which species multiplied, which remained scarce, and which behaviors offered the greatest chance of survival. Entire communities gradually arranged themselves around the presence of a successful hunter. When that hunter disappeared, the balance shifted across the food web, allowing new opportunities to emerge from unexpected directions. The evidence for this long history rests inside stone. Fossilized bones preserve the shapes of ancient bodies. Teeth reveal diets through wear and fracture. Healed bite marks record attacks that failed, while broken shells preserve those that did not. Stomach contents capture final meals, frozen across deep time. Layers of rock establish the sequence of changing worlds, and isotopic dating anchors those moments within Earth's immense calendar. Taken together, these records reveal a remarkable pattern. The ocean did not perfect a single supreme predator and refine it forever. Instead, it repeatedly created the role anew. Each era belonged to a creature unlike the one before it, shaped by an ocean that had become something different, carrying forward the same enduring cycle of change through entirely new forms of life. Long before bones became the framework of giants, life experimented with softer designs, bodies shaped more by flowing water than by rigid support. Among those early experiments emerged a hunter unlike anything the world had produced before, one whose story remained scattered across stone for almost a century because no one realized its pieces belonged together. Its rediscovery became one of the most remarkable detective stories in paleontology, revealing not merely an unfamiliar creature, but the beginning of organized predation in the sea. The first clue appeared in 1892 within the Burgess Shale of what is now British Columbia. Paleontologists uncovered a curved fossil lined with sharp inward spines. It resembled the tail of a shrimp that had lost the rest of its body, so it received the name Anomalocaris, meaning unlike other shrimp. Years later, another fossil surfaced elsewhere in the same ancient rocks. This time, it was a circular structure that looked remarkably similar to a jellyfish. Still later, flattened rows of side lobes were identified as a sea cucumber, while a broad head shield became yet another mysterious organism. Museums preserved each discovery in separate collections, believing they represented unrelated forms of Cambrian life. Only after decades of careful comparison did researchers recognize that every fragment matched perfectly. The supposed shrimp appendage belonged at the front of the head. The strange circle was not a jellyfish at all, but a mouth. The flattened lobes formed the sides of a swimming body, and the shield completed the animal's broad head. 4 imagined species dissolved into one extraordinary predator, assembled from fossils that had patiently waited for their true identity. Fully reconstructed, Anomalocaris stretched as much as 3 feet in length, with a few species possibly approaching 6 feet. In a world where many neighboring animals measured only fractions of an inch, its presence transformed the scale of the Cambrian Sea. Although enormous for its time, it possessed neither bones nor a mineralized shell. Its body remained flexible, protected by a resilient outer covering that provided support without heavy armor, allowing graceful movement through open water. Its head carried 2 remarkable compound eyes perched upon sturdy stalks. Each eye contained thousands of individual lenses, creating one of the most sophisticated visual systems yet known from that distant age. Motion could be detected across a broad field of view, giving the hunter precious moments to react before prey escaped. Extending forward beneath those eyes were 2 segmented appendages lined with curved spines that folded inward around struggling victims. At the center rested a circular mouth composed of 32 overlapping plates that opened and contracted with mechanical precision, unlike anything previously seen in ocean history. Along each side of the body, 11 flexible swimming flaps rippled one after another in smooth sequence. Rather than pushing through the sea with a single tail stroke, Anomalocaris generated flowing waves of motion that carried it forward with surprising efficiency. A broad tail fan guided each turn, allowing careful control as it crossed the water column. For many years, scientists imagined this predator crushing trilobites beneath the strength of its unusual mouth. Trilobites dominated Cambrian ecosystems, and their armored shells seemed natural targets. More recent research, including work published during 2023 by the Royal Society, presented another possibility. Detailed analysis showed that the grasping appendages were shaped for speed and reduced drag rather than overwhelming force. Instead of overpowering heavily armored prey, they appear better suited for rapid pursuit through open water, seizing softer animals before they could flee. That interpretation reshapes the earliest chapter of ocean predation. Rather than stalking slowly across the seafloor searching for heavily protected victims, Anomalocaris may have become the first true pursuit hunter of the open sea, relying upon keen vision, swift acceleration, and precise control. In an ocean filled mostly with creatures scarcely larger than grains of sand, its arrival introduced a scale of predation unlike anything that had come before, establishing the first recognizable image of an apex predator moving through Earth's ancient waters. The influence of a great predator can be measured in more than the lives it takes. Sometimes its greatest legacy is written into the bodies of the animals that survive. Across countless generations, every successful escape becomes a small experiment, preserved if it offers even the slightest advantage. During the reign of Anomalocaris, that gradual conversation between hunter and prey left one of the oldest evolutionary records ever discovered. Trilobites had flourished for millions of years before this new predator appeared. Their segmented shells already provided protection against the hazards of the Cambrian world, yet fossils reveal that many species gradually developed thicker exoskeletons, longer defensive spines, and increasingly elaborate shapes during the same interval in which radiodont predators became widespread. The pattern appears repeatedly across different fossil deposits, suggesting that survival favored individuals whose armor resisted attack more effectively than the generation before. Stone also preserves moments when those defenses almost succeeded. Some trilobite shells bear curved scars matching the grasping appendages of Anomalocaris. In several specimens, the damaged shell healed completely, recording an animal that escaped after a violent encounter and continued living. Others preserve similar wounds with no evidence of healing, marking attacks that reached their end. Together, they provide one of the earliest direct records of predation, revealing that success and failure already shaped evolution through repeated encounters between determined hunters and equally determined survivors. This gradual exchange became the first documented evolutionary arms race in the history of the ocean. Predators improved their methods of capture while prey refined their defenses, each influencing the future of the other across millions of years. Evolution unfolded not as a straight path, but as an ongoing adjustment, where every advantage invited a response, and every response encouraged another innovation. Even within the radiodont lineage itself, diversity expanded into remarkable forms. Anomalocaris occupied only one branch of a much broader family, whose members explored different ways of living in the Cambrian Sea. Among them was Cameroceras, an animal reaching nearly 6 feet in length that abandoned active hunting altogether. Instead of seizing prey, its specialized appendages combed enormous volumes of water, filtering drifting plankton much as the largest whales do today. Its existence demonstrated that even the earliest giant animals could thrive through abundance rather than pursuit. Another relative, Amplectobalua, followed a contrasting path. Robust appendages and stronger feeding structures suggest a predator adapted for crushing heavily armored prey that may have challenged Anomalocaris less frequently. Rather than competing directly for identical food, these neighboring species occupied distinct ecological roles, reducing conflict while sharing the same broad environment. The Cambrian Ocean was already organizing itself into specialized niches, revealing that complex ecosystems emerged astonishingly early in the history of animal life. Vision also reached an extraordinary level of sophistication during this period. Isolated compound eyes, discovered in ancient rocks from Australia, belong to radiodonts closely related to Anomalocaris and preserve thousands of tightly packed visual lenses. Their structure indicates remarkable sensitivity to movement beneath well-illuminated water. Instead of relying primarily upon chemical signals or physical contact, these predators tracked prey through sight, making speed and rapid decision-making increasingly important within marine ecosystems. Eventually, the conditions that had favored radiodont success began to shift. Near the close of the Cambrian, around 485 million years ago, marine communities changed substantially, even though this boundary was not one of the 5 great mass extinctions. Cooling waters altered habitats, prey populations changed in composition, and the earliest fishes gradually entered ecological spaces that had once belonged almost entirely to invertebrates. No single explanation fully accounts for the disappearance of Anomalocaris and its relatives, and paleontologists continue examining the balance between climate, competition, and changing food sources. Their absence closed an important chapter, yet the deeper legacy remained embedded within the ocean itself. The first great hunter had done more than master its environment. It had demonstrated that predators could reshape evolution without lasting forever, leaving behind prey transformed by survival and ecosystems permanently altered by the memory of pursuit. The ocean that followed the Cambrian did not resemble a world recovering from the passing of its earliest hunters. Instead, it expanded into one of the richest marine landscapes Earth had yet produced. Warm water spread across broad continental shelves, covering vast stretches of low-lying land beneath shallow inland seas where sunlight reached the bottom with ease. Across those flooded margins, life multiplied with remarkable speed, filling every available space with new forms whose ancestors had only recently begun their evolutionary journey. Most of the planet's land remained gathered within the immense supercontinent Gondwana, positioned close to the South Pole. Yet the greatest abundance existed far from those colder latitudes, in broad tropical seas that stretched across much of the globe. Coral communities, shelled invertebrates, early echinoderms, and countless drifting organisms flourished together during what paleontologists now call the Great Ordovician Biodiversification Event. Marine diversity expanded to nearly 4 times the richness known from the Cambrian, creating food webs far more intricate than those that had existed before. Amid this growing abundance appeared a predator whose silhouette differed completely from the flexible radiodonts that had ruled earlier waters. Cameroceras belonged to the cephalopods, the ancient lineage that would eventually give rise to modern squid, octopuses, and nautiluses. Yet its body followed an entirely different architectural plan. Rather than curling into a spiral, its shell extended forward as a long, tapering cone, resembling an immense stone horn drifting through the sea. Some estimates place the largest individuals between 20 and 30 feet in length, making Cameroceras the largest animal known anywhere on Earth during its time. The living portion occupied only the open end of that enormous shell. Large eyes watched the surrounding water while a ring of muscular tentacles extended outward, surrounding a powerful beak capable of gripping and breaking resistant prey. Behind the animal stretched a series of internal chambers filled with carefully regulated mixtures of gas and liquid. By adjusting the contents of these chambers, Cameroceras controlled its buoyancy with remarkable precision, rising or descending through the water column without constant swimming. Its immense shell probably discouraged rapid pursuit. Instead, evidence suggests a patient hunter that drifted or hovered until opportunity arrived within reach. Tentacles could surround unsuspecting animals in an instant before drawing them toward the beak, where hard coverings yielded beneath concentrated crushing force. Trilobites, smaller cephalopods, and the earliest jawless fishes likely formed much of its diet, each representing abundant sources of nourishment within Ordovician ecosystems. Conditions within these ancient seas may also have shaped how the predator searched for food. Plankton bloomed across nutrient-rich waters, often reducing visibility. Chemical cues drifting through the current, therefore, may have become just as valuable as sight. Like many modern cephalopods, Cameroceras probably combined several senses while navigating its environment, allowing dissolved traces carried by moving water to reveal nearby prey before direct contact occurred. Competition remained remarkably limited. Vertebrates had only begun their long history in the sea, and the earliest fishes were small, delicate filter feeders lacking jaws and meaningful defensive capabilities. No other known predator approached Cameroceras in overall size or occupied precisely the same ecological position. Its combination of immense scale, buoyant mobility, and crushing mouthparts placed it above a marine community still exploring the possibilities of vertebrate evolution. Fossils attributed to Cameroceras have been recovered from ancient rocks in North America, Scandinavia, and Siberia. Those distant locations once shared connected seas despite their modern separation, indicating that this remarkable cephalopod ranged across much of the Ordovician world. Wherever warm continental shelves provided suitable habitat, the chambered hunter appears to have followed, drifting through waters that had become richer than ever before. Its reign reflected an ocean entering a new phase of complexity. The dominant predator was no longer a swift, soft-bodied pursuer, but a master of buoyancy, patience, and overwhelming reach, demonstrating once again that the sea could invent supremacy through entirely different designs whenever the changing world invited a new solution. Some reigns endure, not because a ruler grows stronger, but because the world offers no rival capable of challenging its place. For a vast span of the Ordovician, the broad shell of Cameroceras drifted through warm continental seas with remarkable stability. Generation followed generation, while coastlines shifted almost imperceptibly, yet the great chambered hunter remained among the most formidable animals in existence, occupying the highest level of the marine food web across millions of years. Its long dominance reflected more than impressive size. The essential innovation that would later transform marine predation had not yet appeared. Jawed vertebrates still belonged to the future. The earliest fishes possessed simple mouths, suited for filtering tiny organisms from the water rather than gripping, struggling prey. Without powerful jaws, no vertebrate lineage could compete directly with a giant cephalopod whose beak and tentacles already handled the largest animals available within its environment. Its shell also served as protection as much as support. The living body remained sheltered within a massive tapered structure that discouraged attack from almost anything sharing those seas. A fully grown Cameroceras probably had little to fear once it reached maturity. Few creatures approached its dimensions, and none possessed the equipment needed to break through such a formidable barrier before the animal could withdraw deeper into its protective home. Nearer the coast, another impressive predator flourished, although under very different conditions. Eurypterids, often called sea scorpions, belonged to an ancient group of marine arthropods that produced some of the largest jointed animals ever known. Certain species reached nearly 8 feet in length, carrying broad swimming paddles and grasping limbs adapted for capturing prey within estuaries, lagoons, and shallow coastal waters. Their appearance recalled oversized terrestrial scorpions, yet they represented a distinct lineage whose lives unfolded almost entirely beneath the surface. Despite their formidable reputation, Eurypterids rarely occupied precisely the same ecological space as Cameroceras. Depth likely separated them. Sea scorpions favored shallower habitats where sediments, tidal currents, and coastal vegetation created rich feeding grounds. Cameroceras, with its buoyant shell and greater size, spent much of its time farther from shore in open marine settings. Occasional overlap may have occurred where coastal shelves broadened into deeper water, but each predator generally ruled a different portion of the Ordovician Ocean, reducing direct competition while sharing the same ancient seas. This balance endured until the planet itself altered the rules. As Gondwana gradually settled across the South Pole, Earth's climate entered a profound period of cooling. Great continental glaciers expanded across southern land masses, locking tremendous volumes of water within growing ice sheets. Sea level fell as coastlines advanced outward, exposing broad continental shelves that had supported immense marine communities for millions of years. The transformation unfolded across habitats that had once sustained extraordinary diversity. Warm, shallow seas contracted, reefs declined, and many species lost the environments upon which their entire existence depended. Food webs that had supported giant predators fragmented as prey populations diminished and ecological connections unraveled. Cameroceras did not encounter a larger hunter waiting to seize its place. Instead, the productive waters that nourished its reign gradually disappeared beneath the consequences of planetary cooling. The late Ordovician mass extinction eliminated an estimated 85% of all marine species, making it one of the greatest biological crises in Earth's history. Giant, straight-shelled nautiloids suffered especially severe losses, and their long era of dominance never returned. Although descendants of ancient cephalopods continued evolving into many successful forms, the age when immense chambered shells stood unchallenged at the summit of ocean life had reached its conclusion. When the glaciers eventually retreated, warmer seas spread once more across recovering coastlines. Coral communities slowly rebuilt. Marine diversity returned, and entirely different opportunities emerged within those renewed ecosystems. The old order had vanished with the changing shoreline, leaving behind an ocean whose future would be shaped by creatures carrying an innovation that had scarcely existed before: the first true jaws of vertebrate life. Some chapters of Earth's history are remembered for the giants they produced. Others are remembered for a single anatomical change so profound that everything afterward unfolded under new rules. The Silurian belonged to the latter. Although this interval lasted only about 25 million years, it altered the future of marine life more completely than many eras several times its length. As the great Ordovician ice sheets gradually retreated, water returned to continental shelves that had stood exposed during the glacial maximum. Warm seas once again spread across low-lying coastlines, carrying nutrients into expanding habitats where marine communities rebuilt themselves with remarkable speed. Among the most important additions were the first extensive coral reef systems. These growing limestone structures transformed broad stretches of shallow water into intricate landscapes filled with crevices, ledges, and sheltered passages, providing homes for an extraordinary variety of animals. Recovery did not simply restore what had existed before. It encouraged entirely new evolutionary experiments. The most influential of them unfolded inside the bodies of small vertebrates whose ancestors had long relied upon simple mouths suited for drawing food inward. Over countless generations, skeletal arches that originally supported the gills gradually shifted position and function. Those ancient supports became stronger, more mobile, and eventually formed the earliest true jaws. This transformation changed predation at its foundation. Before jaws, feeding depended largely upon suction, filtering, or grasping relatively delicate prey. A jaw introduced something entirely different. It allowed an animal to seize another organism securely, resist its struggle, and apply increasing force until escape became impossible. Every future bite delivered by sharks, marine reptiles, predatory fishes, and whales traced its ancestry back to this modest anatomical innovation. The earliest jawed fishes remained small by later standards, and many carried heavy armor across the front of their bodies. Their appearance suggested experimentation rather than perfection, with evolution exploring combinations of protection and offensive capability that had never previously existed. Although these pioneers lacked the size to dominate the oceans immediately, they introduced a mechanical advantage that would eventually reshape every marine food web. The Silurian therefore became a period without a single uncontested ruler. Along many coastlines, large eurypterids continued serving as formidable predators, searching shallow waters with broad paddles and grasping limbs. Farther offshore, surviving cephalopods still occupied important hunting roles, though none approached the overwhelming dominance of the giant straight-shelled forms that had flourished before the Great Glaciation. Meanwhile, the earliest sharks entered the fossil record. These primitive relatives bore little resemblance to the sleek hunters of later ages. They were generally small, uncommon, and occupied lower positions within ecosystems already filled by more established predators. Yet the influence of jaws spread far beyond the animals that possessed them. Prey species responded with equal determination. Brachiopods strengthened their shells. Trilobites developed thicker armor and more elaborate defensive spines. Many mollusks produced increasingly robust protective coverings. Fossils from Silurian rocks reveal this widespread reinforcement occurring across numerous lineages at nearly the same time, reflecting an ocean where biting predators had introduced an entirely new selective pressure. Reef environments amplified these changes even further. Dense communities forced hunters and prey into closer contact, increasing encounters and rewarding every improvement in attack or defense. Complex habitats also encouraged specialization. Some predators pursued swift movement through narrow passages, while others relied upon concealment among coral formations before striking at passing animals. Ecological relationships became increasingly intricate. As marine ecosystems recovered both their abundance and their structural complexity. By the close of the Silurian, the ocean differed profoundly from the one that had emerged after the Ordovician extinction. Warm reefs stretched across expanding continental shelves. Jowled vertebrates had secured a lasting place within marine ecosystems. Primitive sharks had appeared, carrying the earliest outline of a lineage whose greatest achievements still lay far ahead. Beneath the surface, the balance between armor and biting power continued tightening with each passing generation, preparing the sea for an age in which fishes would diversify with astonishing speed and predators would reach levels of sophistication never before witnessed in Earth's ancient waters. The pace of change accelerated once Jaws entered the story. Across the Devonian, new forms of fish appeared with astonishing speed, filling rivers, reefs, coastal shelves, and the open sea with body plans unlike any that had existed before. Paleontologists often call this interval the Age of Fishes because no earlier chapter witnessed such an extraordinary flowering of vertebrate diversity. Within those expanding ecosystems, one lineage rose above the rest, armored from head to chest and built for overwhelming force. These animals were the placoderms, whose heavy bony plates protected the front of the body while leaving the rear free to bend with surprising agility. For roughly 100 million years, they became the most widespread and abundant vertebrates on Earth, occupying habitats across much of the ancient ocean. Among them stood their greatest representative, Dunkleosteus torelli, an animal named in honor of the American paleontologist Dr. David Dunkel, whose work helped bring this remarkable predator into scientific focus. Fully grown individuals reached between about 20 and 33 feet in length and weighed as much as 4 tons. The forward half of the body formed a moving fortress of thick, interlocking plates that wrapped around the head and thorax with remarkable precision. Behind that armor, however, the body narrowed into a flexible, muscular tail, resembling that of a modern shark. Protection and speed existed together within a single design, allowing the predator to absorb tremendous force while still accelerating through the water with confidence. Fossils discovered in North America, Poland, Belgium, and Morocco reveal that Dunkleosteus ranged across much of the Devonian world. Ancient coastlines, separated by modern oceans, were once connected through broad marine basins, allowing this formidable hunter to occupy environments spread across distant regions. Wherever productive seas supported abundant fish, the armored predator appears to have found suitable hunting grounds. Its most extraordinary feature lay inside the skull. Dunkleosteus possessed no true teeth. Instead, thick bony plates projected forward along the jaws, their sharpened edges meeting one another like immense blades. Each feeding strike polished those edges against each other, naturally restoring their cutting surfaces as they wore away. Rather than becoming dull through repeated use, the weapon effectively renewed itself throughout the animal's lifetime. The mechanics behind that bite proved equally remarkable. A specialized arrangement of bones linked the upper and lower portions of the skull in a coordinated system. As the lower jaw dropped, the upper section lifted simultaneously, producing a gape much larger than either movement could create alone. This rapid expansion also generated powerful suction that drew nearby prey inward before the cutting plates closed. Escape became increasingly difficult once the surrounding water itself carried an animal toward the waiting jaws. Research published during 2006 in the scientific journal Biology Letters examined these mechanics in detail through biomechanical reconstruction. The study estimated a bite force approaching 11,000 pounds at the tips of the jaws. Pressure became even more extraordinary, where force concentrated along the sharpened cutting edges, reaching roughly 80,000 pounds per square inch. Among fishes known from the fossil record, no stronger bite has yet been documented. Remarkably, immense power did not require slow movement. Biomechanical analysis indicates that the jaws opened and closed in approximately 50 milliseconds, faster than many living predatory fishes. Strength and speed combined into a feeding system capable of striking before prey had time to react, delivering crushing force with exceptional precision. Evidence preserved within fossilized body cavities reveals that even members of its own species sometimes became prey. Bones matching Dunkleosteus have been discovered inside the stomach regions of larger individuals, indicating episodes of cannibalism. Whether these meals resulted from active hunting, territorial conflict, or opportunistic feeding remains uncertain. Yet they illustrate a predator occupying the highest level of its ecosystem without hesitation or restraint. By the height of the Devonian, the long journey that began with the earliest jaws had reached a striking culmination. Armor, mechanical engineering, immense force, and astonishing speed converged within a single animal, producing one of the most formidable marine predators the ancient ocean would ever assemble. Perfection in nature rarely means elegance. More often, it means that every part of an animal serves a single purpose with extraordinary efficiency. By the middle of the Devonian, Dunkleosteus had become such a creature. Nearly every feature of its body pointed toward one outcome: the reliable capture and consumption of large prey. It was not built to graze, sift, or scavenge. It belonged to a category that modern biologists describe as a hypercarnivore, an animal obtaining well over 70% of its nourishment from meat, with little capacity to survive by any other means. Its menu reflected the richness of the Devonian Sea. Armored fishes disappeared into its jaws alongside early sharks, straight-shelled cephalopods, and other placoderms that had once shared similar ecological roles. Even members of its own species occasionally became food. Such dietary breadth did not arise because prey lacked defenses. The opposite was true. The ocean had become a landscape of shells, bony plates, and protective coverings, where survival often depended upon resisting crushing force. Dunkleosteus succeeded because it alone possessed the mechanical ability to break through the strongest armor available. This specialization shaped the entire ecosystem around it. Smaller placoderms could not rely upon thick plating alone, since their greatest enemy carried jaws designed specifically to overcome that advantage. Every encounter favored individuals whose defenses delayed a fatal bite by even a fraction of a second. Across many generations, those slight differences accumulated within populations, gradually producing more elaborate protective structures throughout the late Devonian fossil record. Not every response involved becoming heavier. Some fishes followed the opposite path, reducing armor in favor of speed. Fossils reveal increasingly streamlined bodies among species living beside Dunkleosteus, suggesting that rapid escape became just as valuable as stronger protection. The ancient conversation between predator and prey continued, although its language had changed from grasping limbs and external shells to engineered jaws and increasingly specialized vertebrate bodies. The life of Dunkleosteus itself also appears to have changed with age. Evidence from fossil distribution indicates that younger individuals probably occupied shallower coastal environments before moving into deeper offshore waters as they matured. Such a transition reduced competition between juveniles and adults, while allowing younger animals to develop among habitats rich in smaller prey. Comparable movements occur today in several large marine predators, where sheltered nursery grounds provide greater opportunities for growth before adulthood opens access to wider oceans. Although heavily armored across its front half, Dunkleosteus was almost certainly not sluggish. The rear portion of the body remained flexible, ending in a broad tail capable of generating powerful thrust. Rather than sustaining prolonged high-speed pursuits, it likely depended upon sudden acceleration from relatively short distances. A concealed approach, followed by explosive movement, suited both its immense bite and its heavily reinforced body. Once striking distance had been reached, few animals possessed the strength or speed to escape. During this same interval, the earliest recognizable sharks already swam through Devonian waters. They existed alongside the great placoderms, but occupied far humbler positions within the food web. Small size and comparatively modest jaws kept them from challenging the established ruler of the sea. In many habitats, they almost certainly served as prey themselves, living beneath the shadow of an animal whose dominance delayed the rise of the lineage that would later inherit the oceans. The fossil record preserves this story with remarkable clarity in some respects and lingering mystery in others. Thousands of specimens have been recovered, most consisting of skulls and armored plates whose dense bone resisted decay and burial. Those remains reveal extraordinary detail, allowing paleontologists to reconstruct the mechanics of the head with unusual confidence. The softer rear body, however, seldom survived the journey into stone. Its shape has therefore been inferred by comparing preserved fragments with closely related placoderms whose skeletons remained more complete. Even with those missing pieces, the design stands unmistakably clear. Dunkleosteus represented an evolutionary solution refined for a particular world, where armor covered nearly every important meal, and only a predator capable of overcoming that barrier could remain at the summit of the Devonian Sea. Extinction does not always arrive as a single catastrophic moment. Sometimes it unfolds gradually, almost imperceptibly, spreading through an ecosystem in repeated waves until the familiar world no longer exists. The closing chapters of the Devonian followed that slower rhythm. Over roughly 20 million years, marine life endured a succession of biological crises that together erased about 3/4 of all known species, transforming the ocean more completely than any predator ever could. The downfall of Dunkleosteus did not begin with an asteroid striking the sea, nor with a single burst of volcanism overwhelming the planet. Instead, the greatest change originated far from the shoreline, across the expanding landscapes where plants had begun transforming the continents. Forests spread over land, with roots reaching deep into newly formed soils, capturing sunlight and producing immense quantities of organic material unlike anything earlier ages had known. When leaves, stems, and entire plants completed their lives, rivers carried enormous amounts of that organic matter toward the sea. There, countless microorganisms began breaking it apart. Their work demanded oxygen dissolved within seawater. As increasing amounts of plant material accumulated, decomposition consumed ever greater quantities of that precious resource, slowly reducing the oxygen available for larger animals. Another process amplified the crisis. Nutrients released from the continents encouraged enormous blooms of microscopic algae across shallow marine waters. While flourishing, these organisms briefly increased biological productivity, yet every bloom eventually faded. As the algae died and settled through the water column, decomposition began again, drawing still more oxygen from the surrounding sea. Repeated cycles of rapid growth, followed by decay, created expanding regions where oxygen concentrations fell to levels incapable of supporting many large marine animals. These vast oxygen-poor waters spread through the broad continental shelves where placoderms had flourished for millions of years. The very habitats that once supplied abundant prey gradually became difficult places for active hunters to survive. A predator as large and metabolically demanding as Dunkleosteus required constant access to well-oxygenated water. As those favorable conditions retreated, its immense strength offered little advantage against an invisible environmental transformation unfolding across entire oceans. Not every creature faced the same burden. Smaller animals generally required less oxygen and often endured conditions that proved fatal to larger species. Some fishes possessed greater physiological flexibility, while the earliest four-limbed vertebrates increasingly explored environments where access to air supplemented life in oxygen-depleted water. Their tentative movements between aquatic and terrestrial habitats represented another quiet experiment whose importance would become far clearer in later ages. For the placoderms, however, no such refuge existed. Every known lineage vanished at the close of the Devonian. Across the planet, armored fishes that had dominated marine ecosystems for approximately 100 million years disappeared without leaving direct descendants. Paleontologists regard this as one of the most complete group-level extinctions preserved within the fossil record. A dynasty that once seemed firmly established ended so thoroughly that only its fossils reveal how successful it had ever been. The disappearance of Dunkleosteus also removed the dominant force that had shaped countless ecological relationships throughout the Devonian. Armor no longer required the same extraordinary defensive thickness once its greatest enemy had vanished. Food webs reorganized around different pressures, opening opportunities that had remained unavailable while placoderms occupied the summit of marine life. Among the quiet beneficiaries were the sharks. For millions of years, they had existed beside the armored giants as comparatively modest animals, often occupying lower ecological roles and, at times, serving as prey themselves. Their bodies demanded less rigid armor, their skeletons remained lighter, and their designs proved adaptable to changing environments. Once the placoderms disappeared, ecological space that had remained closed for ages suddenly became available. Evolution responded with remarkable speed. Sharks diversified into forms that explored new habitats and feeding strategies across recovering seas, expanding into positions their ancestors had never occupied. The Devonian ended with the disappearance of one of the greatest predator lineages the ocean had ever assembled, yet the water itself had once again selected a different path forward, not through conquest between rivals, but through environmental change that favored an entirely new generation of hunters. By the time the Devonian had passed into memory, the balance of the sea had shifted once again. Waters that had belonged to armored giants now belonged to a remarkably different dynasty. Throughout the Carboniferous, beginning around 359 million years ago and lasting until roughly 299 million years ago, warm shallow seas spread across broad continental shelves. Coral reefs expanded, marine forests of crinoids flourished, and sharks became the dominant hunters of the open ocean for the first time in Earth's history. These early sharks did not resemble the familiar forms that patrol modern seas. Evolution seemed willing to test almost every imaginable design, producing bodies that appeared more like biological experiments than established blueprints. Many lineages flourished briefly before disappearing forever, leaving behind only scattered teeth, fragments of cartilage, and rare impressions that hint at an astonishing diversity now completely absent from living oceans. Among the most remarkable was Helicoprion, whose most distinctive feature puzzled paleontologists for more than a century. Fossils preserved an extraordinary spiral of teeth arranged into a tightly wound whorl, yet almost nothing of the surrounding skeleton survived because cartilage rarely fossilizes well. For decades, scientists proposed increasingly imaginative reconstructions, placing the spiral on the snout, the back, or projecting forward like a circular saw. Only in 2013 did computed tomography scanning reveal that the tooth whorl rested inside the lower jaw, functioning as part of the mouth itself. Rather than spinning freely, the tightly packed teeth likely swept prey toward the throat while continuously replacing worn cutting edges as new teeth formed within the growing spiral. Other sharks followed equally unfamiliar paths. Stethocanthus possessed a broad, flattened dorsal fin in mature males, shaped almost like a small anvil. The upper surface of this structure carried the same tooth-like scales covering the top of the head, creating one of the most unusual display features known among ancient vertebrates. Its precise purpose remains uncertain. Some researchers suggest it played a role during courtship, while others believe it may have helped males establish dominance over rivals without requiring lethal combat. Falcatus explored another solution. This comparatively small shark carried a long spine projecting forward from the back of mature males. Fossil discoveries, preserving groups of individuals, suggest that males and females differed noticeably in appearance, indicating the spine probably served reproductive behavior rather than defense. Such structures reveal that natural selection shaped far more than feeding alone. Competition for mates also influenced the astonishing variety of forms emerging during this flourishing chapter of shark evolution. For this reason, paleontologists often describe the Carboniferous as the golden age of bizarre sharks. Countless body plans appeared, many unlike anything swimming today. Some disappeared without leaving descendants, while others contributed small branches to the lineage that would eventually produce modern sharks and rays. The period demonstrated that evolutionary success did not depend upon finding a single perfect design. Instead, life repeatedly explored different possibilities until changing environments selected only a few to continue. The largest predatory sharks of the Carboniferous rarely receive the same recognition as more famous prehistoric hunters because they are usually known from isolated teeth rather than complete skeletons. Even so, those teeth reveal agile carnivores occupying the highest levels of marine food webs. They lacked the immense armored jaws of Dunkleosteus, yet compensated through lighter bodies, efficient swimming, and continually replacing dentitions that remained effective throughout life. As the Carboniferous gradually yielded to the Permian, beginning about 299 million years ago, the continents assembled into the vast supercontinent known as Pangaea. Encircling this immense landmass stretched the global ocean called Panthalassa. Ocean currents reorganized as coastlines changed, creating pronounced differences between warm tropical waters and increasingly cool polar seas. Sharks retained dominance across many marine ecosystems, while large cephalopods continued occupying important predatory roles. Along sheltered coastlines, another lineage began tentative experiments. Small marine reptiles entered shallow waters, carrying with them anatomical possibilities that would later transform the seas in ways no Carboniferous shark could have anticipated. Even as these new arrivals remained modest in size, the foundations of another great transition were already taking shape beneath the surface. Long before the familiar outlines of modern oceans emerged, the history of marine life passed through a chapter so severe that nearly every earlier dynasty vanished. Around 252 million years ago, the boundary between the Permian and the Triassic marked the greatest biological catastrophe ever recorded on Earth. It surpassed every other extinction in scale, transforming the sea from a thriving network of predators, reefs, and countless smaller organisms into a world where survival itself became extraordinarily rare. The numbers remain almost beyond comprehension. Approximately 96% of all marine species disappeared. The collapse reached every level of the food web. Apex predators vanished alongside reef builders, shell-bearing animals, drifting plankton, and many microscopic organisms that formed the foundation of ocean ecosystems. Entire evolutionary lineages that had endured for tens of millions of years ended within this interval, leaving only scattered survivors to carry marine life forward. The driving force behind this disaster did not arrive from space. Instead, it rose from deep within the planet itself. In what is now Siberia, an immense volcanic province known as the Siberian Traps erupted over a span of roughly 1 to 2 million years. Layer upon layer of molten rock poured across the landscape in volumes almost impossible to visualize. Altogether, the eruptions released enough lava to bury an area comparable to the continental United States beneath several miles of solid rock, creating one of the largest volcanic events known in the geological record. Even more destructive than the lava was the atmosphere those eruptions created. Immense quantities of carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide entered the air over countless generations. As these gases accumulated, the climate shifted rapidly by geological standards. Average global temperatures climbed by approximately 10 to 11 degrees Fahrenheit. The warming altered rainfall, weather patterns, and the circulation of the oceans, disrupting systems that had remained comparatively stable for millions of years. The sea responded with a chain of interconnected changes. Warmer water held less dissolved oxygen, making survival increasingly difficult for active animals. Carbon dioxide entered seawater and combined with water molecules to form carbonic acid, reducing the availability of the chemical ingredients required by many organisms to build shells and skeletons. Across broad continental shelves, oxygen levels declined until immense regions became incapable of supporting most complex marine life. Vast stretches of water turned into biological dead zones where only the hardiest organisms could endure. When the crisis finally eased, the oceans bore little resemblance to the rich environments that had existed before. Sedimentary rocks deposited during the earliest Triassic contain extensive dark layers, often described as black zones, intervals preserving remarkably few fossils of large or complex animals. Reefs that had supported extraordinary biodiversity disappeared almost entirely. The remarkable assortment of carboniferous sharks had largely vanished. Early marine reptiles remained only as scattered survivors. Food webs that had once stretched across every depth had collapsed into greatly simplified communities, dominated by small, adaptable species capable of tolerating unstable conditions. Recovery unfolded with extraordinary patience. For approximately 5 million years, marine ecosystems remained comparatively impoverished, rebuilding only in scattered pockets before expanding more broadly. Even after life regained momentum, fully developed ocean communities required roughly 10 million years to approach the diversity that had existed before the catastrophe. No other known mass extinction demanded such an extended interval before complex marine ecosystems became widespread once again. Yet even within this diminished world, evolution continued its steady work. A handful of resilient survivors carried inherited traits into the uncertain future. Among them were small ancestors of the ichthyosaurs, marine reptiles whose descendants would soon adapt with astonishing speed. Within only about 8 million years, one lineage, emerging from the shadows of the Great Dying, would rise to command the recovering seas, demonstrating once again that the role of apex predator could disappear almost completely, yet never remain empty forever. Recovery did not begin with giants. It began with countless small survivors drifting through waters that had only recently emerged from the deepest ecological collapse in Earth's history. The Triassic Ocean remained comparatively sparse, its communities far less diverse than those that had flourished before the end Permian extinction. Yet life rebuilt itself patiently from the foundation upward. Plankton multiplied, invertebrates diversified, and schools of smaller animals gradually filled expanding food webs. By around 244 million years ago, those recovering seas had accumulated enough living energy to support the return of a hunter, unlike anything the ocean had seen before. Its discovery unfolded across decades rather than days. Fossil preparator Jim Holstein uncovered the first remains in the Augusta Mountains of central Nevada during 1997. The fossils were later collected during 2008. Then carefully studied until researchers formally described the animal in 2013 through the proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. What emerged from the surrounding stone was not merely another marine reptile, but evidence that complex ocean ecosystems had recovered far sooner than many paleontologists once believed possible. The creature received the name Thalattoarchon saurophagus, meaning lizard-eating sovereign of the sea. The title reflected more than impressive size. It recognized an animal occupying the highest position within its environment, a predator capable of hunting prey approaching its own proportions. That ecological role had vanished during the Great Dying, leaving the recovering ocean without a dominant hunter until this remarkable reptile appeared. Thalattoarchon belonged to the ichthyosaurs, marine reptiles descended from land-dwelling ancestors that had returned to the sea. Although their bodies eventually evolved into shapes resembling modern dolphins, that resemblance arose independently through convergent evolution rather than close relationship. Beneath its streamlined outline remained the heritage of a four-limbed vertebrate whose distant ancestors had once walked across dry ground before reversing course and embracing an entirely aquatic existence. Known remains indicate a body reaching at least 28 feet in length, making it likely the largest marine animal alive during its time. Size alone, however, does not explain its extraordinary place in evolutionary history. The greatest revelation rested within its skull. Earlier ichthyosaurs carried simple conical teeth suited for gripping fish or soft cephalopods before swallowing them whole. Thalattoarchon possessed something fundamentally different. Its teeth were flattened from front to back, each bearing sharpened cutting edges capable of slicing through flesh rather than merely holding slippery prey. This unusual dental design transformed scientific understanding of its lifestyle. Blade-like teeth are inefficient for capturing small fish, yet exceptionally effective for cutting apart large animals with substantial muscle and soft tissue. Such anatomy indicates a hunter adapted to attacking sizable vertebrates rather than surviving on schools of modest prey. Instead of exploiting whatever food happened to be abundant, it specialized in pursuing powerful animals capable of resisting capture. Because of those anatomical features, paleontologists recognize the Thalattoarchon as the earliest documented macropredator to emerge after the end Permian extinction. A macropredator hunts prey approaching its own body size, demanding strength, speed, and sophisticated feeding adaptations unavailable to ordinary carnivores. Even more significantly, it became the first known ocean macropredator descended from a secondarily aquatic tetrapod, demonstrating that land animals returning to the sea could rapidly evolve into rulers of marine ecosystems. Researchers have often compared its ecological role to that of the modern orca, not because the animals shared ancestry, but because both occupied similar positions within their respective food webs. Each functioned as an active pursuit hunter targeting large prey while standing at the highest trophic level of the ocean. Across more than 200 million years of separate evolutionary history, natural selection arrived at remarkably similar solutions for dominating open water. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Thalattoarchon is neither its size nor its formidable jaws, but its timing. Barely 8 million years separated its appearance from the greatest extinction the oceans had ever endured. In geological terms, that interval passed with astonishing speed. The presence of such a specialized apex predator reveals that marine ecosystems had recovered enough complexity to sustain the highest level of predation, providing one of the clearest fossil signals that life, even after almost unimaginable devastation, could rebuild itself with surprising resilience. Long before later giants inherited the sea, one remarkable predator quietly answered a question that had puzzled paleontologists for generations. How could an ocean devastated almost beyond recognition produce a fully realized apex hunter in so little geological time? The appearance of Thalattoarchon only 8 million years after the end Permian extinction transformed that mystery into one of the clearest windows ever opened onto the resilience of ancient ecosystems. 8 million years stretches beyond ordinary imagination. Entire mountain ranges, weather, rivers, reshape continents, and countless generations rise and disappear within such an interval. Yet against the immense scale of Earth's history, that span is astonishingly brief. Earlier scientific expectations proposed that rebuilding a marine ecosystem capable of supporting a macro-predator would require many tens of millions of years. Instead, the fossil record revealed a very different story, one in which recovery advanced with surprising speed once the underlying ecological foundations returned. The explanation begins at the bottom rather than the top. No apex predator appears first. Hunters, occupying the highest position within a food web, depend upon enormous quantities of living energy beneath them. Plankton must flourish before small invertebrates can prosper. Those invertebrates sustained fishes and other consumers, which in turn provide nourishment for progressively larger predators. Every level rests upon the success of the one below it. Remove enough of those supporting layers, and the summit cannot exist. Seen through that ecological perspective, Thalattoarchon becomes more than an impressive marine reptile. It serves as living evidence that the recovering Triassic Ocean had already rebuilt much of its hidden architecture before its arrival. Vast populations of microscopic organisms must have been thriving. Schools of prey fishes needed to exist in sufficient abundance. Marine invertebrates had to recycle nutrients and transfer energy upward through the expanding web of life. By the time such a predator appeared in the fossil record, countless smaller recoveries had already unfolded beyond direct observation. Its own feeding habits strengthen that conclusion. Paleontologists interpret its specialized, cutting teeth as adaptations for attacking large vertebrate prey rather than small schooling animals. Evidence suggests that smaller ichthyosaurs, along with other marine reptiles inhabiting the recovering seas, formed part of its diet. This represents the earliest documented example of a secondarily aquatic tetrapod preying upon other large vertebrates in the ocean. The food web had regained enough complexity to support predator upon predator, an ecological structure impossible without substantial biological abundance beneath them both. From that beginning emerged one of the longest-lasting dynasties in marine vertebrate history. Thalattoarchon stood near the opening chapter of the ichthyosaurs rather than their conclusion. Across approximately 160 million years, its relatives diversified into an extraordinary range of forms. Some evolved into swift pursuit hunters comparable in size to modern dolphins, perfectly shaped for rapid travel through open water. Others expanded toward astonishing dimensions, exploring evolutionary possibilities unavailable to their earliest ancestors. Among the greatest of these descendants was Shonosaurus sicaniensis, a late Triassic giant estimated to have reached around 70 feet in length. At that scale, it may have become the largest known animal to exist anywhere on Earth up to its own time. Such immense proportions emerged from the same evolutionary lineage that began with comparatively modest reptiles venturing back into the sea after their distant ancestors abandoned life on land. Although ichthyosaurs resembled dolphins in overall appearance, the similarity arose independently. Natural selection repeatedly favored streamlined bodies, powerful tails, and efficient swimming in animals adapting to open oceans. Evidence also suggests that many ichthyosaurs possessed elevated metabolic rates resembling warm-bodied animals rather than typical reptiles. Fossils preserving pregnant individuals reveal another remarkable adaptation. Instead of crawling ashore to lay eggs, they gave birth to fully developed young directly in the water, freeing them from any continued dependence upon land. Through all these innovations, the significance of Thalattoarchon remained unchanged. It was not merely a formidable hunter. It was the unmistakable signature of an ocean that had already climbed astonishingly far from the greatest biological collapse in planetary history, carrying within its presence the proof that life could rebuild complexity far sooner than anyone had once imagined. The sea had become a world of intersections. Ancient coastlines drifted apart as the supercontinent Pangaea slowly fractured, allowing new waterways to spread between separating lands. The broad Tethys Sea widened across tropical latitudes, while the earliest reaches of the Atlantic Ocean began taking shape. Warm epiric seas spilled across vast portions of what would one day become Europe and North America, creating immense shallow habitats where marine life expanded into extraordinary abundance. Every newly opened basin offered another stage upon which evolution explored fresh possibilities. Few intervals in Earth's history matched the Jurassic for the sheer concentration of large marine predators sharing the same waters. Ichthyosaurs crossed the open sea with streamlined bodies shaped by relentless pursuit. Long-necked plesiosaurs drifted through reef systems and deeper channels, extending narrow heads toward schools of fish with graceful precision. Marine crocodiles, known as Thalattoarchons, abandoned nearly every trace of their terrestrial ancestry, some reaching 20 feet in length, several developing paddle-shaped limbs that carried them with surprising efficiency across coastal waters. Around them drifted immense populations of ammonites, whose coiled shells filled nearly every ecological niche available to cephalopods. Giant squid ancestors moved through darker depths, while sharks diversified into increasingly specialized hunters, unlike those of earlier ages. Above this crowded assembly rose another branch of the plesiosaur family that embraced an entirely different design. Instead of an elongated neck supporting a modest head, pliosaurs evolved compact bodies dominated by immense skulls, thick muscular necks, and four broad flippers resembling underwater wings. Their shortened tails contributed comparatively little to propulsion. Power came from coordinated strokes of all four limbs, producing remarkable control beneath the surface while allowing sudden bursts of acceleration whenever opportunity appeared. Among these formidable reptiles stood Pliosaurus funke, an animal discovered within the frozen rocks of the Norwegian Arctic archipelago of Svalbard during expeditions conducted between 2007 and 2009. The fossils were formally described in 2012, revealing one of the largest predatory marine reptiles ever identified. Estimates suggest an overall length between 33 and 40 feet, with body mass approaching 45 tons. Such proportions placed it among the heaviest ocean predators known from the age of reptiles. Its skull alone measured between 6.5 feet and 8 feet in length, rivaling the total body size of many surrounding marine animals. Set within powerful jaws were teeth reaching approximately 12 inches long, each built for gripping struggling prey before tremendous force completed the attack. Rather than relying upon delicate cutting edges, these teeth functioned as robust spikes, capable of enduring enormous mechanical stress while penetrating thick flesh and bone. Biomechanical studies suggest astonishing power concentrated at the front of the jaws. Estimates place the pressure at roughly 33,000 pounds per square inch near the tooth tips, a value that has led some researchers to propose one of the greatest bite forces ever achieved by any known animal. Such force transformed every closing motion into an event capable of crushing resistant tissue and securing prey that few other hunters could challenge successfully. Movement through the water reflected equally specialized engineering. Each flipper generated both lift and forward thrust, functioning much like the wing of a bird operating beneath the surface. Evidence indicates that the front pair supplied most of the steady propulsion during ordinary travel, maintaining efficient cruising across long distances. The rear flippers remained ready to contribute additional force during rapid acceleration, allowing swift directional changes or explosive lunges toward nearby prey. Instead of depending upon constant high speed, Pliosaurus balanced endurance with overwhelming bursts of power. This combination of immense size, exceptional propulsion, and crushing jaws secured a commanding place within Jurassic seas already crowded by accomplished predators. It hunted among ichthyosaurs, sharks, marine crocodiles, and countless cephalopods, occupying the summit of one of the richest marine ecosystems the planet had yet assembled. Within that flourishing ocean, shaped by widening seas and evolving continents, Pliosaurus embodied another remarkable solution to the enduring challenge of becoming the dominant hunter of its age. Motion became its greatest weapon. Many formidable hunters throughout Earth's history mastered either patience or endurance, waiting in concealment for a passing opportunity or exhausting prey across long pursuits. Pliosaurus followed neither path alone. Its body was engineered for movement in every direction the ocean could offer, transforming open water into a hunting ground where distance and orientation provided remarkably little protection. Rather than being confined to a horizontal chase, it occupied a world with height, depth, and countless angles of approach. That extraordinary freedom came from an anatomical design unlike anything living today. 4 immense flippers worked together as coordinated hydrofoils, each contributing lift as well as propulsion beneath the surface. The front pair supplied the steady force required for efficient travel across long distances, while the rear pair adjusted balance, generated additional thrust, and sharpened rapid changes in direction. Instead of following broad, sweeping turns, Pliosaurus could redirect its momentum with striking precision, shifting forward, climbing toward the surface, descending into deeper water, or banking diagonally through the water column with unusual control. Studies examining the proportions and mechanical properties of preserved flipper bones suggest sustained cruising speeds approaching 16 feet per second, while short bursts of acceleration were almost certainly much greater. Such performance made sense within the densely populated Jurassic seas, where prey ranged from swift fishes to agile marine reptiles. Speed alone rarely guarantees success in predation. Maneuverability often determines the final moments of pursuit, when a single abrupt turn separates survival from capture. Every feature of the pliosaur body appears to have favored mastery of those decisive movements. For animals sharing its environment, escape options narrowed dramatically. Swimming upward offered no lasting advantage. Diving toward darker water accomplished little. Sudden lateral turns or steep diagonal climbs remained well within the capabilities of a hunter built to generate thrust across multiple planes. The ocean itself became a continuous hunting arena rather than a landscape divided into separate layers of relative safety. Its diet reflected that versatility. Fossil bones bearing tooth marks matching the size and spacing of pliosaur teeth have been recovered from ichthyosaurs, long-necked plesiosaurs, large fishes, and marine crocodiles. These traces reveal a predator willing to attack nearly every substantial animal occupying its ecosystem. Such evidence portrays neither selective specialization nor dependence upon a single food source. Instead, Pliosaurus exploited whatever sizable prey could be captured within reach of its formidable jaws. Additional discoveries strengthened the interpretation of an active hunter rather than a scavenger. Some prey fossils preserve healed bite wounds consistent with pliosaur attacks. Those injuries demonstrate that victims occasionally survived encounters, continuing to live long enough for damaged bone to repair itself. Like every successful predator, Pliosaurus sometimes failed. The fossil record preserves those unsuccessful attempts alongside fatal ones, offering a rare glimpse into ordinary struggles rather than only decisive victories. Because it belonged to the marine reptiles, breathing remained dependent upon air. Regular journeys to the surface were essential throughout its life, limiting its activities to waters where vision remained effective. It was not a creature of perpetual darkness. Large eyes and repeated surfacing indicate a hunter relying heavily upon sight while searching sunlit or moderately illuminated seas. Its nostrils present another intriguing adaptation. Positioned near the front of the snout, yet opening internally into the mouth, they differ from those of modern marine mammals. Current research suggests this arrangement may have allowed detection of chemical gradients drifting through seawater, enabling the animal to follow faint traces released by injured or abundant prey. In effect, the surrounding ocean carried invisible streams of information alongside ordinary currents. The Jurassic Sea, therefore, supported an ecological arrangement without known precedent. Giant pliosaurs occupied the highest level of open water macropredation, while ichthyosaurs pursued faster, generally smaller prey using different strategies and body designs. Distinct apex predator lineages shared the same oceans without completely replacing one another, dividing resources through contrasting forms of specialization. During the early Cretaceous, however, pliosaurs gradually declined. Paleontologists continue debating the causes, with changing prey populations, expanding shark diversity, and shifting climates all remaining plausible influences upon the closing chapter of their remarkable history. By the closing chapters of the Cretaceous, the ocean bore little resemblance to the seas that had once belonged to armored fish or giant pliosaurs. Global waters remained remarkably warm, averaging roughly 10 degrees Fahrenheit above those of the modern world. Ice did not crown the poles, and rising seas spread across continental interiors. One immense inland sea divided North America from the Arctic to the Gulf of Mexico, linking distant coastlines through broad, shallow waters where marine life flourished in astonishing abundance. The greatest rulers of earlier ages had gradually disappeared. The mighty pliosaurs had faded from the fossil record, and the ichthyosaurs, whose ancestors had returned to the sea after the greatest extinction in Earth's history, vanished around 90 million years ago for reasons that remain uncertain. Their departure left an ecological opportunity unlike any before it. Another lineage, one that had begun entirely on land, was already moving into that vacant role with remarkable speed. These newcomers were the Mosasaurs, marine reptiles descended from terrestrial lizards rather than ancient ocean dwellers. Their closest living relatives are monitor lizards, including the Komodo dragon, while snakes share a more distant branch of the same evolutionary family. Their transformation unfolded with striking rapidity in geological terms. Legs became sturdy paddles, capable of steering through open water. Bodies lengthened into streamlined forms that reduced drag. The nostrils gradually shifted farther back along the snout, allowing easier breathing while much of the head remained submerged. Most dramatically, the tail deepened into a broad, propulsive fin that supplied the overwhelming majority of forward thrust. From their earliest entrance into marine environments to worldwide ecological dominance required only about 20 million years, an exceptionally brief interval for such a complete transition from terrestrial reptile to supreme ocean predator. Evolution repeatedly demonstrates that when opportunity appears, natural selection can reshape familiar bodies into forms almost unrecognizable from their ancestors. Among all known members of this family, Mosasaurus hoffmanii became its most celebrated representative. Reaching lengths of approximately 56 feet, it rivaled the largest sharks known throughout Earth's history. Its body combined 4 paddle-shaped limbs with a long muscular trunk and a tall, laterally compressed tail. Unlike ichthyosaurs, whose swimming resembled that of modern tuna, Mosasaurus advanced through sweeping side-to-side waves, traveling along the body into the tail, producing powerful thrust with each rhythmic motion. Its skull reflected an equally specialized design. Long and heavily built, it carried an appearance reminiscent of a crocodile, yet concealed a remarkable adaptation unseen in those reptiles. Beyond the primary row of sharp teeth lay another row embedded within the roof of the mouth. Once prey entered the jaws, those additional teeth helped prevent escape by gripping from above while the outer teeth secured the sides. Every movement carried struggling animals deeper into the throat instead of allowing them to pull free. Although estimated bite forces ranging between approximately 13,000 and 16,000 pounds per square inch did not surpass every marine predator that had come before, raw pressure alone tells only part of the story. The combined action of multiple tooth rows created an exceptionally efficient feeding mechanism capable of controlling large prey with relentless effectiveness. Its jaws also possessed a degree of flexibility uncommon among large reptiles. Loosely connected bones allowed the mouth to widen substantially, resembling the feeding mechanics of modern snakes. Rather than slicing prey into small portions, Mosasaurus could swallow surprisingly large sections, and in some cases consume animals whose bodies exceeded the width of its own head. The scientific story of this extraordinary reptile began long before anyone understood what it truly represented. During the 1770s, workers quarrying limestone near the Dutch city of Maastricht uncovered enormous fossil bones. Early observers proposed that the remains belonged to a whale or perhaps a giant crocodile. Only decades later did their true identity emerge, and in 1822, the English geologist William Conybeare formally assigned the name that would become one of the most recognizable in all of prehistoric marine life. From those weathered stones emerged the portrait of a terrestrial lizard that had returned to the sea and claimed its highest throne. No single shoreline defined the reach of the mosasaurs. Their domain extended across nearly every sea that existed during the closing chapters of the Cretaceous, leaving traces that would one day emerge from rocks scattered around the world. Fossils have been uncovered in North America, Europe, Africa, South America, Japan, New Zealand, and even Antarctica. No other known apex predator of the ocean achieved such a thoroughly documented global presence at the same moment in Earth's history. Wherever broad marine habitats flourished, some member of this remarkable family was often present, adapted to local conditions, while remaining unmistakably part of the same evolutionary dynasty. North America preserved especially rich evidence because the western interior seaway stretched across the heart of the continent, creating an immense corridor of warm marine habitat. Europe yielded the specimen that first introduced the world to Mosasaurus itself through limestone deposits in the Netherlands. Far to the south, Antarctica, now locked beneath immense ice sheets, preserves fossils from an age when its surrounding waters supported thriving marine ecosystems. Together, these discoveries reveal not isolated populations, but an interconnected radiation that occupied nearly every major ocean basin of the late Cretaceous world. Such extraordinary distribution reflected more than simple abundance. Mosasaurs did not succeed because every species hunted in the same manner. Instead, they diversified into an array of ecological roles that allowed close relatives to share the same waters without competing directly for identical prey. Rather than representing one dominant predator, they formed an entire community of specialized hunters, each shaped by different opportunities within the expanding marine food web. The largest members, including Mosasaurus, Hoffmanni, and Tylosaurus, patrolled open water in search of substantial prey. Large bony fish, sharks, sea turtles, and even other mosasaurs fell within their range. Their elongated bodies and powerful tails allowed them to pursue sizable animals across considerable distances before delivering crushing attacks with heavily armed jaws. Fossil evidence suggests that encounters between giant mosasaurs were not always peaceful, reminding us that the greatest predators frequently competed with members of their own lineage. Other relatives followed different paths. Platecarpus possessed a noticeably more streamlined form that may have favored greater swimming speed and agility. Instead of concentrating on enormous prey, it likely pursued dense schools of fish, relying on rapid maneuvering through open water. Its success demonstrates that evolutionary dominance does not always favor increasing size. Sometimes, efficiency and specialization provide equally effective solutions. An even more remarkable departure appeared in Globidens. Its teeth abandoned the familiar pointed shape associated with grasping flesh. Instead, they became rounded, sturdy structures capable of crushing hard shells. Ammonites and heavily armored shellfish became valuable food sources that few large predators could exploit as efficiently. Close beside this unusual specialist stood Carinodons, another mosasaur with comparatively small but rounded teeth, refined even further for breaking durable shells. Together they illustrate how one successful family expanded into numerous feeding strategies without abandoning its shared ancestry. This ecological partitioning resembles the organization of modern marine mammal communities, where different species occupy distinct niches while sharing the same broad environment. Some specialize in swift fish, others pursue squid, while still others consume hard-shelled prey. The mosasaurs achieved a comparable balance many millions of years earlier through their own independent evolutionary experiment. Direct evidence preserves remarkable glimpses of these ancient meals. Several fossil specimens retain stomach contents, providing rare confirmation of dietary habits. Bite marks carved into ammonite shells correspond closely with mosasaur dentition, recording encounters that ended with shattered armor. One celebrated specimen of Thalattoarchon preserved the remains of a diving bird, a large bony fish, and another marine reptile within its body cavity, capturing successive meals that unfolded across a single lifetime. Perhaps most revealing are discoveries involving sharks. Fossil shark remains bearing bite damage consistent with mosasaur jaws demonstrate that these formidable fishes were themselves hunted. The size relationships already hinted at this reality, yet the fossil record provides unmistakable support. During the late Cretaceous, sharks remained important predators, but they did not occupy the summit of ocean life. Across much of the planet, that highest place belonged to the globally dominant mosasaurs. The turning point arrived not as a gradual shift, but as a single collision that altered every ocean on Earth. Around 66 million years ago, an asteroid measuring approximately 6 miles across descended through the atmosphere and struck the region that is now the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico. Traveling at roughly 43,000 miles per hour, it released more energy than any volcanic eruption or earthquake witnessed by human history. The sea itself became part of the impact, carrying the consequences outward in every direction with astonishing speed. Within moments, the surrounding waters surged into enormous waves. Tsunamis rising hundreds of feet crossed the Gulf of Mexico before spreading into neighboring seas. Coastlines vanished beneath advancing walls of water, while sediments were torn from the seafloor and scattered across distant basins. Entire marine communities disappeared beneath forces too immense for any living creature to resist. The event unfolded in hours, yet its imprint remained preserved within layers of rock that still circle the globe. The impact site contained thick deposits of limestone rich in sulfur-bearing minerals. When the asteroid excavated this ancient bedrock, Immense quantities of sulfur entered the atmosphere alongside vaporized rock and seawater. Mixed with water vapor, these materials formed sulfuric acid that returned to the surface as rain over the following hours and days. At nearly the same time, the tremendous burst of heat ignited forests across broad regions of the planet. Ash and burned organic material drifted through the atmosphere before settling into rivers and oceans, adding another burden to marine environments already struggling beneath unprecedented upheaval. The greatest transformation, however, unfolded after the violence of the impact had faded. Dust, pulverized rock, soot, and ejecta spread around the planet, forming a dense veil that greatly reduced sunlight reaching Earth's surface. The darkness endured for months, and perhaps much longer in some regions. Across the upper ocean, microscopic phytoplankton depended upon sunlight to transform energy into living tissue. As illumination diminished, these tiny organisms declined on a planetary scale. The consequences rippled downward through every level of marine life. Zooplankton that grazed upon phytoplankton found increasingly little to consume. Small fishes dependent upon drifting plankton populations also dwindled. Larger predators soon encountered shrinking schools of prey, and the intricate web supporting the great reptiles of the Cretaceous began to unravel. The collapse spread upward from the smallest organisms, proving once again that the greatest hunters ultimately depended upon life too small to be seen without magnification. Mosasaurs vanished within this geologically instantaneous interval. The remaining long-necked plesiosaurs disappeared alongside them, bringing to a close a lineage that had survived for many millions of years. The magnificent ammonites, whose spiral shells had filled the seas since long before the first dinosaurs walked on land, also reached their final chapter. Ocean ecosystems that had flourished throughout the Cretaceous dissolved with astonishing completeness, leaving behind only scattered survivors capable of enduring prolonged scarcity. Those survivors shared certain qualities rather than common ancestry. Small body size reduced the amount of food required for survival. Flexible diets allowed animals to consume whatever resources remained available. Generalist lifestyles proved more resilient than extreme specialization. Sharks once again endured, while many dominant competitors vanished, repeating a pattern already witnessed after earlier catastrophes. Their persistence reflected evolutionary versatility rather than temporary supremacy. Yet survival did not immediately restore former grandeur. For roughly 10 million years after the impact, no immense apex predator ruled the open ocean. Sharks continued to diversify, but none immediately occupied the commanding ecological position once held by the giant marine reptiles. The highest place in the food web remained unexpectedly vacant, as though the sea itself paused before beginning another chapter. Far from the open water, along shorelines where rivers met the tides, another story had already begun. Among mammals still living mostly on land, certain small four-legged forms ventured into coastal habitats with increasing frequency. Their earliest fossils appear modest beside the vanished giants, yet within those ordinary bones rested the first signs of an entirely new dynasty preparing to enter the sea. Long before whales ruled the open ocean, their ancestors walked along riverbanks beneath dense forests, where land and water blended into broad coastal plains. Their story did not begin with fins or flukes, but with hooves pressing into damp soil. Among the mammals living in what is now South Asia, one lineage gradually found opportunity along the water's edge. Generation after generation, natural selection favored individuals that searched streams, estuaries, and shallow coastal waters for food. Over millions of years, those modest excursions reshaped an entire body plan, producing one of the most remarkable evolutionary transformations preserved in the fossil record. Around 50 million years ago, an animal known as Cameroceras represented one of the earliest recognizable chapters of that transition. Roughly the size of a wolf, it retained strong limbs for walking while spending increasing amounts of time near water in pursuit of fish. Its skeleton still belonged unmistakably to a land mammal, yet subtle features within the skull, especially around the ear, reveal the ancestry that would eventually connect it to every whale alive today. Only a few million years later, Anomalocaris carried the experiment much farther. Its name, meaning walking whale, reflects an animal equally comfortable moving between shoreline and water. With powerful limbs and an elongated body, it likely propelled itself through rivers and coastal shallows in a manner resembling a modern crocodile before hauling itself back onto land. The balance between terrestrial and aquatic life had begun to shift, though neither world had yet been fully abandoned. By about 45 million years ago, Cameroceras displayed a body increasingly committed to marine existence. The hind limbs had diminished considerably, the torso had become more streamlined, and swimming replaced walking as the primary means of travel. Although traces of its terrestrial heritage remained, the sea had become the center of its life. Another few million years brought Megalodon, fully aquatic in nearly every meaningful respect. Functional hind limbs had disappeared, and its overall silhouette already hinted at the proportions seen in living dolphins and smaller whales. Then, around 38 million years ago, evolution produced a predator unlike any modern whale. Basilosaurus isis entered warm Eocene seas with a body that challenged early scientific interpretation. When its enormous fossils were first uncovered, naturalists believed they belonged to a giant marine reptile, inspiring the name meaning king lizard. Only later did careful anatomical study reveal that this impressive hunter was not a reptile at all, but a mammal descended from those river-dwelling ancestors that had once walked upon land. Basilosaurus reached lengths approaching 66 feet, making it the largest known animal to live after the disappearance of the non-avian dinosaurs at that point in Earth's history. Yet, its proportions differed dramatically from those of modern whales. Rather than possessing a compact, torpedo-shaped body, it stretched into an elongated, serpentine form that resembled a tremendous eel moving through open water. The narrow body likely generated graceful undulations as it swam, creating a distinctive style of movement unlike any whale living today. Its ancestry remained visible in tiny vestigial hind limbs positioned near the rear of the body. Far too small to assist with swimming, these miniature legs probably served some role during mating, preserving a distant anatomical memory of terrestrial origins long after their original function had vanished. At the opposite end of the body, large, well-developed teeth equipped Basilosaurus for seizing and tearing substantial prey, distinguishing it sharply from the filter-feeding giants that would appear much later. The ocean surrounding Basilosaurus was itself a place of extraordinary abundance. During the Eocene, Earth lacked permanent polar ice caps, sea levels remained exceptionally high, and warm waters supported flourishing marine ecosystems across much of the planet. Early whales of many sizes shared these seas with enduring shark lineages that had survived the great extinction at the close of the Cretaceous. Marine mammals were diversifying rapidly, exploring ecological opportunities left vacant millions of years earlier. Into this thriving world swam Basilosaurus, a mammalian apex predator whose existence revealed that the ocean had entered an entirely new age. Among the fossils of ancient whales, a few discoveries carry an unusual intimacy. Bones reveal how an animal lived, teeth hint at what it might have hunted, and skeletons describe the shape of long vanished bodies. Yet on rare occasions, the final meal of a predator remains preserved within its own ribs, offering a glimpse that no jaw or claw alone could ever provide. For Basilosaurus, that extraordinary evidence emerged from one of the richest windows into the Eocene Ocean ever uncovered. The discovery came from Wadi al-Hitan, known in English as the Valley of the Whales, in Egypt. This remarkable landscape, recognized as a World Heritage Site, preserves hundreds of fossil whales that once swam through a warm tropical sea during the Eocene. Layer after layer of ancient sediment captured skeletons with astonishing completeness, allowing paleontologists to reconstruct an ecosystem that flourished long after the disappearance of the great marine reptiles. Within those rocks, Basilosaurus and its smaller relative, Dorudon atrox, appear again and again, their remains scattered across the same ancient seafloor. For many years, researchers suspected that Basilosaurus occupied the highest level of the food web. Its formidable teeth, immense size, and commanding anatomy all pointed toward a life as an apex predator. Even so, anatomy alone cannot always reveal behavior with certainty. Nature often produces structures capable of several different purposes, and paleontologists seek evidence that moves beyond reasonable inference into direct confirmation. That confirmation arrived through a detailed study published during 2019 in the journal Public Library of Science, one by Eric Voss, Mohammed Sameh M. Antar, Iyad Zalmoud, and Philip D. Gingerich. Examining preserved stomach contents associated with specimens of Basilosaurus isis, the researchers identified something remarkable. Mixed among the remains were bones belonging to juvenile Dorudon atrox. Several carried bite marks whose spacing closely matched the teeth of Basilosaurus itself, creating an unmistakable connection between predator and prey. The stomach contents also contained remains of the large Eocene fish Pycnotus mocatamensis, demonstrating that Basilosaurus fed across multiple levels of the marine ecosystem rather than specializing exclusively on fellow whales. This combination of prey painted the picture of an adaptable hunter capable of exploiting whatever opportunities presented themselves in the warm Eocene seas. Unlike conclusions drawn solely from tooth shape or skeletal proportions, preserved stomach contents provide direct evidence of diet. They record an actual feeding event that occurred millions of years before human beings existed. For Basilosaurus, this discovery transformed long-standing expectations into documented reality. The largest whale in its environment did not merely coexist with smaller whales. It hunted them. That realization carries significance beyond the life of a single species. Following the asteroid impact that ended the reign of mosasaurs and other great marine reptiles, the oceans eventually produced a new apex predator, one descended not from reptiles but from land mammals. Basilosaurus became the first confirmed marine mammal known to occupy that commanding ecological position, beginning a lineage of mammalian predators that continues through modern toothed whales and orcas. Its methods differed from those of living dolphins. Basilosaurus lacked the specialized skull structures associated with echolocation in modern toothed whales. Rather than navigating and hunting through sophisticated biological sonar, it likely depended primarily upon vision, aided perhaps by sensitivity to pressure changes moving through the surrounding water. Its long, serpentine body probably swam by sweeping from side to side, unlike the powerful up and down tail strokes used by modern whales. Such a design suggests a hunter that relied more upon careful positioning and sudden attacks than prolonged high-speed pursuit. Across the broader Eocene ocean, Basilosaurus shared its world with increasingly diverse sharks, including lineages that would eventually give rise to formidable modern forms. The seas had entered another period of transition where several predator groups explored the highest levels of the food web. For a time, however, the evidence preserved within the ribs of Basilosaurus leaves little doubt that one immense whale stood among the greatest hunters of its age. The ocean had changed again, though not through sudden catastrophe. Continents drifted toward positions that would become increasingly familiar. Currents shifted with them, and the waters of the Miocene carried a different rhythm from the ancient seas that had belonged to reptiles and early whales. The climate remained warmer than today, yet cooler than the lush Eocene world. Across broad coastal shelves, immense herds of baleen whales gathered in growing abundance. These gentle giants transformed sunlight, captured through countless drifting plankton, into vast reserves of living energy. In time, that abundance invited hunters unlike any the ocean had known before. One belonged to an ancient lineage of sharks whose ancestors had endured extinction after extinction. The other came from mammals that had once walked on land before reclaiming the sea. Their paths converged within the same age, creating one of the rarest moments in the history of marine life when two predators of astonishing size shared the uppermost place in the food web. The shark was Ototus megalodon, its scientific name meaning giant tooth. From roughly 23 million years ago until about 3.6 million years ago, it ruled the oceans for nearly 20 million years, one of the longest uninterrupted reigns ever held by an apex marine predator. Estimates suggest adults commonly reached between 50 and 60 feet in length, with the largest individuals weighing as much as 70 tons. Even among giants, its proportions stood apart. Each jaw carried about 276 teeth, arranged in 5 functional rows. As older teeth fractured or wore away, replacements rotated steadily into position, ensuring that the bite remained continuously armed. Individual teeth exceeded 7 inches in length, the largest shark teeth ever discovered. Their broad triangular edges were shaped for slicing through flesh and cracking dense bone. Studies estimating bite force suggest pressure reaching between 24,000 and 40,000 pounds per square inch, likely surpassing every other known animal in the fossil record. Such power allowed the shark to attack even the largest whales by breaking the strong bones of their fins or tails before delivering fatal wounds elsewhere. Fossilized whale skeletons preserve this strategy, bearing deep bite marks concentrated around the limbs that controlled movement, evidence of a hunter that disabled first and fed afterward. Research published during the 2022 year described Ototus megalodon as a massive, highly mobile, transoceanic superpredator. Rather than remaining within one coastline, it likely crossed entire ocean basins during seasonal migrations, following concentrations of whales across thousands of miles of open water. The sea itself became its hunting ground, with no shoreline defining the limits of its range. Sharing those same productive waters was another extraordinary hunter, Leviathan melvilli, a giant raptorial sperm whale named after the biblical Leviathan and the novelist Herman Melville. Living around 12 to 13 million years ago, it grew to nearly 57 feet long and weighed roughly 50 tons. Unlike modern sperm whales that rely mainly upon teeth in the lower jaw, Leviathan possessed enormous functional teeth in both jaws. Some measured more than 14 inches long, making them the largest biting teeth known from any animal. Instead of pursuing squid in deep water, this whale hunted large vertebrates, including other marine mammals, using powerful jaws designed to seize struggling prey directly. For a remarkable span of geological time, these two immense predators occupied overlapping ecosystems. Neither represented a fading remnant of an older world. Each belonged fully to its own successful lineage, refined through millions of years of evolution toward the same ecological summit. Their coexistence reveals how richly productive the Miocene oceans had become, sustaining two hunters of comparable size and formidable capability without reducing either to rarity. It remains the only known interval in Earth's history when rival apex predators of such immense scale shared the same seas, each tracing different evolutionary paths toward the same commanding place beneath the waves. Across countless generations, the presence of Ototus megalodon seemed as enduring as the tides themselves. Its descendants crossed ocean basins, followed migrating whales, and left teeth embedded within the bones of prey across much of the world. Yet, even the longest reigns yield to gradual change. Around 3.6 million years ago, the fossil record reveals the closing chapter of the greatest shark ever known, not through an abrupt disappearance, but through a retreat so measured that it unfolded over many hundreds of thousands of years. The earliest signs appear not in the shape of the shark itself, but in the map traced by its fossils. Older deposits place its teeth along coastlines, spanning nearly every major ocean. Younger layers become increasingly selective. Specimens vanish from higher latitudes, while remaining common in warmer seas. With still younger sediments, even those tropical waters preserve fewer remains. Eventually, the record falls still, suggesting a shrinking world whose boundaries tightened until no refuge remained. Paleontologists estimate that this withdrawal lasted roughly between 1 and 2 million years, making the extinction a prolonged process rather than a single catastrophic event. The changing climate formed one thread within this larger story. During the Pliocene epoch, global temperatures continued to decline. Expanding polar ice reshaped ocean circulation, altered coastlines, and transformed habitats that had remained productive for millions of years. Warm, shallow waters, especially those used by baleen whales as protected calving grounds, became less extensive. These sheltered nurseries had supplied predictable hunting opportunities for enormous predators capable of taking young whales before they reached full strength. At the same time, the whales themselves were changing their habits. Many adapted successfully to cooler conditions, expanding seasonal migrations toward increasingly productive polar feeding grounds. Such journeys carried them across waters that favored animals capable of maintaining high activity in colder environments. Evidence suggests that Ototus megalodon remained strongly associated with warm seas. Unlike certain later marine predators possessing advanced physiological adaptations for colder temperatures, this giant shark appears to have been constrained by its dependence upon warmer coastal ecosystems. As its principal prey shifted farther from those familiar waters, the distances between successful hunts may have grown steadily greater. Other hunters also entered this changing stage. The great white shark, Carcharodon carcharias, expanded its own geographic range during much of the same interval. Although dramatically smaller, it tolerated cooler water and pursued many of the same young marine mammals that once formed part of the giant shark's food supply. Size alone does not determine ecological success. Flexibility, reproductive strategy, and the ability to exploit changing environments can become equally decisive as climates evolve across millions of years. Another possible influence appeared within the fossil record around 5 million years ago. Early members of the lineage, leading to modern orcas, began occupying coastal seas. These predators relied not upon overwhelming size, but upon cooperation, communication, and learning. Whether they directly contributed to the decline of Ototus megalodon remains uncertain, and paleontologists continue to debate the extent of their influence. Even so, their arrival reflects an ocean where intelligence increasingly became another powerful evolutionary advantage. No single cause fully explains the disappearance of the giant shark. Cooling oceans, shifting whale migrations, growing competition, and changing ecosystems likely acted together, each adding another gentle pressure until the balance that had sustained the species for millions of years could no longer be maintained. Extinction, in this case, resembled a long receding tide rather than a crashing wave. What remained behind proved remarkably durable. Teeth, hardened with resilient enamel, settled into coastal sediments on every continent. Even today, they continue emerging from cliffs, riverbeds, and beaches, becoming the most abundant fossils left by any giant marine predator. Their persistence offers one final reminder that dominance leaves traces long after the living animal has vanished. As the great shark faded from the seas, the highest place within the marine food web did not remain empty for long. It gradually passed toward a hunter shaped less by greater size than by an expanding capacity for memory, cooperation, and thought. The next transformation in the history of ocean predators did not begin with a larger body or a sharper tooth. Across the immense span of the fossil record, each dominant hunter had seemed to inherit the sea through physical innovation. One lineage refined crushing jaws, another evolved faster swimming. Others gained armor, greater size, stronger muscles, or new ways of moving through open water. Generation after generation, supremacy appeared to belong to anatomy alone. Yet the closing chapters of this long procession reveal a different pattern, one that could never be measured by the length of a skull or the force of a bite. By the time Otodus Megalodon disappeared, another hunter had already entered the world's oceans. The earliest confirmed fossils belonging to the lineage of the modern orca date to roughly 5 million years ago, placing these remarkable marine mammals alongside the final chapters of the giant shark's existence. Whether they directly hastened its extinction remains uncertain and continues to be debated, but their appearance marked the beginning of a fundamentally different strategy for ruling the sea. Looking back across earlier oceans reveals an extraordinary progression. Anomalocaris relied upon keen senses and swift individual attacks within Cambrian waters filled with unfamiliar forms of life. Cameroceras waited as an ambush predator, its long shell concealing a hunter that likely lived alone. Dunkleosteus carried overwhelming mechanical power within armored jaws, perhaps gathering loosely where prey became abundant, yet leaving no convincing evidence of organized cooperation. Pliosaurus mastered pursuit through remarkable control of 4 powerful flippers, but every indication suggests a solitary existence. Mosasaurus may occasionally have occurred in groups where prey gathered in great numbers, although the fossil record cannot demonstrate coordinated hunting. Basilosaurus appears to have hunted primarily as an individual, with social bonds perhaps limited to mothers and their young. Even Otodus Megalodon, despite evidence for nursery areas where juveniles developed within sheltered coastal waters, shows no indication that adults hunted together. The orca introduced something entirely different. Cooperation was no longer an occasional circumstance. It became the defining feature of survival. Every individual belonged to a closely connected family whose members communicated, remembered, and learned from one another across many years. Hunting ceased to depend solely upon the abilities of a single animal. Success emerged from coordination, timing, and shared experience accumulated through generations. Modern observations reveal pods employing remarkably diverse techniques shaped by local traditions. Some create waves that wash resting seals from floating ice. Others herd schools of fish into dense spheres before taking turns feeding. Certain populations specialize in hunting sharks by overturning them into temporary immobility. Elsewhere, groups pursue whales many times their own size, exhausting them through carefully coordinated attacks in which each participant performs a different role. These behaviors are not instinct alone. Young orcas acquire them gradually by observing older relatives, preserving knowledge that spreads through families, much as traditions pass between human communities. This capacity transformed the meaning of strength within the marine world. A predator smaller than Ototus megalodon, possessing a bite far weaker than that of Pliosaurus, and lacking armor altogether, achieved ecological dominance through the collective abilities of many minds acting together. Intelligence itself became an evolutionary adaptation equal to teeth or muscle. The ocean had always rewarded physical innovation, yet over hundreds of millions of years, another resource quietly accumulated within one remarkable lineage. Memory became inheritance. Communication became strategy. Experience became as valuable as anatomy. For the first time since predators appeared beneath ancient seas, the highest place in the food web belonged not to the animal with the greatest size or the strongest jaws, but to one whose greatest advantage traveled invisibly between generations, carried not within fossilized bone, but within living behavior, enduring relationships, and the shared knowledge of the pod. No dramatic change in anatomy announces the final ruler of this long journey. After hundreds of millions of years, shaped by sharper teeth, heavier armor, stronger jaws, and larger bodies, the modern ocean is dominated by an animal whose greatest adaptation cannot be preserved in stone. Fossils reveal the framework of its skeleton, yet the true source of its success exists only in living minds, shared experience, and knowledge carried across generations. The orca, or Sinus orca, is commonly called the killer whale, although it is not a true whale in the taxonomic sense. Instead, it is the largest living member of the dolphin family. Adult males may reach between 20 and 26 feet in length and weigh as much as 12 tons. They are capable of swimming at speeds approaching 34 miles per hour, making them among the fastest marine mammals alive today. Healthy adults possess virtually no natural predators. Beyond occasional conflicts with members of their own species, the greatest danger they face comes from human activity. Their physical appearance gives few hints of such extraordinary dominance. The jaws are powerful but lack the overwhelming force once possessed by Ototus megalodon. Their teeth are simple conical structures, suited for gripping rather than slicing or crushing. They do not resemble the blade-shaped teeth of Thalattoarchon, the immense biting machinery of Dunkleosteus, or the serrated arsenal of the giant shark. Judged only by anatomy, the orca appears surprisingly ordinary beside many of the predators that came before. Its success emerges instead from remarkable versatility. No other known marine predator has demonstrated such an extensive prey range. Orcas feed upon salmon, herring, tuna, squid, seals, sea lions, dolphins, porpoises, sea turtles, and seabirds, including penguins. They regularly hunt sharks, even formidable species such as the great white. Along the coast of South Africa, documented encounters have shown pods killing great white sharks with such consistency that local shark populations abandoned long-established hunting grounds for extended periods. Larger pods have also attacked other whales, including blue whales, the largest animals ever known to exist upon Earth. Few predators in natural history have displayed comparable flexibility. The explanation lies within behavior rather than anatomy. Around the world, different orca populations have developed distinct hunting cultures shaped by local environments and preserved through learning instead of instinct alone. Along the coast of Norway, pods surround schools of herring, producing curtains of bubbles while flashing their pale undersides beneath the fish. The frightened school compresses into a dense sphere, allowing individuals to strike with powerful tail flukes before feeding together. Every participant contributes to the success of the hunt through careful positioning and timing. Far to the south, Antarctic populations employ an entirely different method. Groups approaching floating ice coordinate their swimming until a carefully formed wave surges across the surface, washing resting seals into open water where escape becomes nearly impossible. Success depends upon precision, so exact that each animal must match the movements of its companions within moments. Near the shores of New Zealand, certain pods regularly rub their bodies across rounded pebble beaches. This behavior serves no obvious hunting purpose and appears instead to represent a social tradition maintained within particular communities. Such customs reveal that orca societies preserve behaviors extending beyond immediate survival. Young orcas spend years observing mothers, grandmothers, and older relatives before mastering these techniques. Knowledge passes through families much as language, craftsmanship, or tradition moves through human generations. A matriarch carries decades of accumulated experience, remembering migration routes, seasonal feeding grounds, and successful hunting strategies. When such an individual dies, a pod may lose far more than one member. It can lose unique knowledge that cannot simply be rediscovered. After 500 million years of evolving stronger weapons, the ocean reached an unexpected destination. Its most successful modern apex predator does not dominate because it possesses the largest teeth or the greatest bite. It prevails because memory became inheritance, cooperation became instinct refined by experience, and intelligence itself became the most powerful adaptation ever to rise beneath the waves. Long before an orca is seen beneath the surface, its presence may already be known through sound. A series of clicks, whistles, and pulsed calls travels across the water, each carrying information shaped by countless generations. Within those exchanges exists a form of inheritance. Unlike teeth preserved in stone, or bones buried beneath ancient sediment. Across the immense history of ocean predators, this chapter belongs not to sharper weapons, but to the remarkable expansion of the mind itself. Among living animals, the orca possesses one of the most sophisticated brains ever studied. An adult brain weighs approximately 15 pounds, around 5 times the mass of the average human brain. Size alone, however, tells only part of the story. The surface of the orca brain is deeply folded, creating an immense area devoted to processing information. Hidden within it is an especially elaborate region known as the paralimbic system, a structure found in whales and dolphins that has no precise equivalent in the human brain. Its complexity has drawn considerable scientific attention because researchers believe it plays an important role in processing intricate social relationships and emotional experiences. Direct evidence of those capacities appears repeatedly in observations from the wild. Female orcas have been documented carrying deceased calves upon their heads or backs for days, and in some cases, for weeks. During these periods, they often reduce feeding activity while remaining close to family members that accompany them throughout the journey. Scientists avoid assigning human emotions too freely, yet such behavior strongly suggests forms of attachment and social bonding far deeper than simple instinct. The possibility that grief, or something resembling it, exists within another apex predator expands the story of ocean evolution in an unexpected direction. Communication provides another remarkable window into that hidden world. Every pod possesses its own dialect, composed of distinctive clicks, whistles, and pulsed calls. These vocal traditions function as acoustic signatures that immediately identify family membership. Pods separated by geography gradually develop increasingly different dialects across generations, creating patterns that resemble the slow divergence of human languages. Individuals recognize familiar voices within their own families and distinguish them from neighboring groups, maintaining social identity across vast stretches of open water. Knowledge does not remain fixed within a single lifetime. Adult females actively teach hunting skills to younger relatives through repeated demonstration and patient guidance. A mother may present prey, allow a calf to attempt capture, retrieve the escaping animal, and repeat the lesson until the technique improves. Such interactions extend well beyond passive observation. They represent deliberate instruction, allowing experience accumulated over decades to become the foundation for the next generation. Recent behavioral research has added another intriguing chapter. During 2025, scientists documented 34 separate encounters across 4 different oceans in which wild orcas approached humans with prey items. These included fish, marine mammals, seabirds, and several other kinds of animals, representing 18 different species altogether. Some offerings occurred beside boats, others near swimmers, and still others along the shoreline. The animals occasionally waited after presenting the prey, as though observing the human response before departing. Researchers remain cautious in their interpretation, suggesting the behavior may represent play, curiosity, or a form of social engagement rather than purposeful sharing. Whatever its explanation, the observations point toward a level of behavioral flexibility rarely documented among wild predators. Evidence for self-awareness strengthens that impression. In carefully designed studies, some orcas have passed the mirror self-recognition test, demonstrating behavior interpreted as recognition of their own reflected bodies rather than another individual. Although the meaning of this result continues to be explored, self-recognition is widely associated with the capacity to model the perspectives and intentions of others, an ability often described as theory of mind. Seen across the vast sweep of ocean history, the transformation becomes unmistakable. Earlier rulers claimed dominance through larger jaws, thicker armor, greater speed, or overwhelming bite force. The modern apex predator reached the summit through another path entirely. Coordination replaced solitary strength, culture became as valuable as instinct, planning outweighed brute force, and intelligence emerged as the most enduring adaptation ever carried through the sea. 500 million years stretches far beyond ordinary imagination. Continents assembled and separated, mountains rose and disappeared, entire oceans opened where dry land had once stood, then vanished beneath colliding plates. Within that immense passage of time, countless predators emerged, flourished, and disappeared. Considered one by one, each reign appears unique. Seen together, they reveal a deeper pattern, one written not by any single creature, but by the changing character of the planet itself. The first pattern emerges from ancestry. No ruler inherited the ocean through an unbroken family line. Anomalocaris did not give way to an even larger descendant of its own kind. Dunkleosteus was not replaced by another placoderm with thicker armor. The great marine reptiles vanished without leaving successors from their own branches of the evolutionary tree. Each new sovereign arrived from a lineage that had previously occupied a very different place within the living world. Sharks existed while armored fishes dominated. Mammals remained small while mosasaurs ruled the seas. Those overlooked groups endured long enough to inherit opportunities their predecessors never encountered. The fossil record repeatedly suggests that today's ordinary survivor may become tomorrow's unrivaled hunter. Equally striking is the manner in which every reign concludes. Across hundreds of millions of years, no documented apex predator lost permanent dominance because another predator simply overpowered it in direct competition. The decisive force always came from somewhere larger than any individual animal. Oxygen levels shifted, ocean chemistry changed, sea levels rose or retreated, temperatures drifted across immense spans of time. Continents altered the circulation of currents. An asteroid transformed the entire biosphere within moments of geological history. Each predator mastered its rivals, yet none mastered the changing ocean that sustained its existence. That relationship exposes another recurring truth. Every dominant hunter became exquisitely specialized for the conditions surrounding it. Dunkleosteus thrived within warm Devonian seas, rich in armored prey, only to face widespread oxygen depletion that reshaped marine ecosystems. Mosasaurus flourished in broad Cretaceous oceans, filled with abundant reptiles and fish, perfectly suited to a world that disappeared after a cosmic collision altered climate across the globe. Megalodon prospered while warm coastal waters supported immense populations of baleen whales, then gradually retreated as cooling oceans redirected those migrations toward higher latitudes. Adaptations that produced extraordinary success under one set of conditions became limitations when the environment followed a different path. Another lesson appears in body shape itself. Evolution repeatedly discovered similar engineering solutions without repeating ancestry. Ichthyosaurs developed streamlined forms remarkably similar to modern dolphins, despite descending from reptiles. Mosasaurs evolved elongated bodies, powered by powerful tails that echoed the appearance of later whales, while sharing no close relationship with them. Similar ecological roles encouraged similar physical designs because water imposes consistent demands upon every fast swimmer. Convergent evolution transformed unrelated creatures into familiar silhouettes again and again, revealing that natural selection often arrives at comparable answers through entirely different evolutionary journeys. Viewed across the complete sequence, the greatest transformation involves neither size nor weaponry. Early predators depended primarily upon sensory advantages and straightforward attacks. Later, hunters acquired stronger jaws, faster movement, improved maneuverability, and more efficient methods of capturing prey. Eventually, another quality began to outweigh physical power alone. Social learning accumulated across generations. Communication preserved knowledge beyond individual lifetimes. Cooperation multiplied the effectiveness of every participant within a hunting group. Intelligence gradually became an ecological adaptation, every bit as important as sharper teeth or thicker armor. The modern orca stands at the current crest of that immense progression, not because it possesses the largest body, the strongest bite, or the heaviest armor, but because coordinated thought allows a group to accomplish what no solitary predator could achieve. From the compound eyes of Anomalocaris to the shared traditions of living pods, the history of ocean dominance traces an unexpected arc. The enduring trend is not toward greater physical strength alone. It bends, slowly and persistently, toward increasing complexity, where knowledge, memory, cooperation, and culture become the most powerful adaptations ever carried through the sea. Across every chapter of this journey, one truth has lingered beneath the rise of each new ruler. While living within its own age, every apex predator appeared unshakable. Nothing in its daily existence hinted that its reign would someday exist only as scattered fossils beneath layers of stone. From the perspective of those ancient seas, permanence was an illusion shared by every generation. Cameroceras drifted through the Ordovician Ocean for tens of millions of years, with no rival approaching its immense scale. It occupied a world where its dominance seemed woven into the fabric of the sea itself. Then the planet changed. Global temperatures shifted, sea levels retreated, and marine ecosystems unraveled with astonishing speed in geological terms. Roughly 85% of marine species disappeared during that crisis. The giant hunter vanished with them. Its immense shell, once the defining outline of an entire ocean, became another fragment of Earth's growing archive. A similar story unfolded much later. Megalodon survived for approximately 20 million years, leaving behind enormous teeth that today are discovered on every continent. No other shark approached its size or strength. Whale bones still preserve the unmistakable marks of its attacks, reminders of a predator that once ranged across nearly every warm ocean on the planet. Yet its disappearance unfolded gradually rather than dramatically. Suitable habitats contracted, prey shifted toward colder waters, ecological pressures accumulated, and by approximately 3.6 million years ago, the lineage had faded entirely. An empire, measured across oceans, dissolved without a final battle. The Mosasaurus seemed even more secure. Their descendants occupied seas stretching around the globe, adapting into numerous forms that divided the available prey among themselves. They spread farther than any previous marine reptile and reached every major ocean, including waters surrounding Antarctica. Their success appeared almost limitless until an extraterrestrial impact transformed Earth's climate. Within a geologically brief interval, the ecosystems that had supported their reign collapsed from the smallest plankton upward. Their remarkable adaptations could not preserve them from an environment that no longer resembled the one they had mastered. Taken together, these histories reveal what might be called the predator's dilemma. Becoming an apex predator requires extraordinary specialization. Every improvement sharpens efficiency within a particular ecological setting. Teeth become optimized for certain prey. Bodies evolve around specific temperatures, hunting grounds, or patterns of movement. Senses become tuned to familiar conditions. Such refinement produces unmatched success while the environment remains stable. The same refinement can become a profound limitation once that environment begins to change. Generalists often endure where specialists disappear. Species capable of consuming many kinds of food, occupying varied habitats, or tolerating shifting conditions possess greater flexibility during times of upheaval. Highly specialized predators frequently stand at the opposite extreme. Their dominance depends upon ecological circumstances remaining favorable. When those circumstances vanish, adaptation may not proceed rapidly enough to keep pace with the transformation. The paradox is remarkably consistent across the fossil record. The qualities that elevate a species to the summit of the food web also increase the risk that its eventual decline will be irreversible. Dominance and vulnerability grow together rather than existing as opposites. Evolution rewards exceptional precision, yet the planet itself never remains fixed for long enough to guarantee that precision forever. One important distinction separates the present from every previous chapter. Earlier extinctions ended one reign, leaving ecological space that natural processes eventually filled with another apex predator. Oceans recovered, diversified, and continued the long experiment of evolution. Today, marine ecosystems are once again changing. Ocean temperatures continue to rise. Ocean acidity has increased as seawater absorbs additional carbon dioxide, with average potential hydrogen values declining by approximately 1/10 of a unit since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, representing roughly a 26% increase in acidity. Many regions are experiencing declining oxygen concentrations, while numerous prey populations have diminished across multiple levels of the marine food web. These are measurable environmental changes that resemble mechanisms associated with several ancient extinction events, including widespread oxygen depletion, shifts in global temperature, and increasing ocean acidity. Whether modern species can adapt rapidly enough remains one of the most important scientific questions of our time. The fossil record offers remarkable clarity about what ultimately happened in the distant past, yet it preserves only the final outcome. It never records the uncertain moment when the future still remained unwritten. A different perspective emerges after tracing the succession of rulers across deep time. It is tempting to remember this journey as the history of remarkable hunters, each inheriting the highest place in the food web before yielding it to another. Yet the farther back the fossil record reaches, the less those predators resemble the true authors of the narrative. They were not writing the story. They were being written by something far older and vastly more enduring. The ocean shaped every creature that has appeared along this path. Anomalocaris belonged to waters unlike any that exist today. Cameroceras drifted through seas, formed by a different arrangement of continents and climates. Dunkleosteus grew within warm, shallow oceans rich in oxygen, conditions capable of supporting heavily armored giants. Thalattoarchon emerged after catastrophe had opened new ecological possibilities. Pliosaurus flourished where immense marine reptiles could pursue abundant prey. Mosasaurus inherited broad inland seas, flooded beneath high global sea levels. Basilosaurus entered an ancient ocean, warm from pole to pole. Megalodon depended upon extraordinary concentrations of large whales. The modern orca arose within environments where intelligence, cooperation, and flexibility offered greater rewards than sheer size alone. Every body plan reflected the character of the sea that surrounded it. Every hunting strategy represented a response to available prey, changing coastlines, shifting temperatures, and evolving ecosystems. Even extinction followed the same pattern. When ocean chemistry changed, predators changed. When currents shifted, predators shifted. When climates transformed, so too did the living forms capable of surviving within them. The hunters appeared powerful because they embodied conditions that temporarily favored their design. None stood apart from the world that produced them. Warm, oxygen-rich shallows encouraged armored fishes unlike anything before or since. Vast plankton blooms supported immense populations of whales, creating the caloric abundance necessary for a hunter the size of Megalodon. Cooler oceans, complex coastlines, and long-lived family groups favored animals whose greatest advantage rested inside the brain rather than within the jaw. Alter the nature of the sea, and evolution begins composing a different generation of dominant life. Beneath those visible transformations lies an even deeper continuity. Every atom within a modern orca has traveled through an almost unimaginable history. Long before becoming part of living tissue, many of those atoms drifted through ancient seawater, settled into sediments, entered shells, bones, algae, fishes, reptiles, mammals, and countless organisms whose names will never be known. Geological processes lifted them onto continents, returned them to rivers, dissolved them into oceans once again, and carried them onward through another cycle of life. Some atoms moving through an orca today may once have formed part of an Anomalocaris swimming during the Cambrian period. Others may have passed through the armor of Dunkleosteus, the teeth of Mosasaurus, or the skeleton of Basilosaurus before beginning another journey. The precise paths cannot be reconstructed, yet the chemistry of Earth makes such exchanges entirely plausible across immense spans of time. Matter itself has never belonged permanently to any single creature. It has remained in motion since long before the first predator entered the sea. Viewed across approximately 500 million years, dominance acquires a different meaning. A reign that once seemed immeasurable becomes only a brief arrangement of living matter under a particular set of environmental conditions. Even Mosasaurus, among the most widespread marine apex predators ever known, occupied roughly 20 million years, only a small fraction of the entire chronology traced throughout this story. The contrast becomes greater still when measured against humanity. Human civilization extends back roughly 10,000 years, representing only about 0.002% of this immense timeline. Deep time gently reshapes every familiar sense of permanence. Predators rise, flourish, and disappear, while the ocean continues composing new possibilities from the same enduring world, carrying its uninterrupted story forward through water, stone, life, and the atoms that connect them all. The sea has carried this story for approximately 4 billion years. Across that immense span, it has endured boiling beginnings, global ice, changing chemistry, dwindling oxygen, rising heat, falling seas, flooded continents, and mountains born where ancient coastlines once rested. It has received the force of worlds falling from the sky and watched entire branches of life disappear beneath its surface. Yet, after each turning point, currents continued to move, nutrients continued to cycle, new ecosystems slowly emerged, and another generation of hunters eventually claimed the highest place within the living web. That continuity offers a perspective unlike any measured within a single lifetime. The ocean itself is remarkably enduring on geological timescales. Individual coastlines vanish, species appear and disappear. Entire food webs collapse before gradually assembling once more from survivors that seemed insignificant when the previous world still existed. Recovery never recreates what was lost. Instead, every recovery becomes the beginning of something entirely new, shaped by conditions that no earlier creature could have anticipated. For that reason, the central question has never truly been whether the ocean survives. The deeper question concerns the form that survival eventually takes. Every transformation changes the kinds of animals the sea is capable of producing. Some lineages flourish beneath one climate and fade beneath another. Others remain unnoticed for millions of years before circumstances unexpectedly favor their abilities. The ocean persists, yet its inhabitants continually rewrite what dominance means. The modern orca stands at the latest chapter in that unfolding history. Unlike every great predator that came before, its greatest advantage is not extraordinary armor, overwhelming size, or the strongest bite ever assembled by evolution. Its defining strength lies within shared memory, communication, cooperation, and learned tradition. Hunting strategies pass from mothers to calves. Dialects identify families separated by vast distances. Knowledge accumulates across generations, rather than beginning anew with every birth. In that sense, culture has become as significant as anatomy. Whether such flexibility allows adaptation to unusually rapid environmental change remains unknown. Intelligence can alter behavior within a single lifetime, while evolution often unfolds across countless generations. No fossil bed can reveal whether that difference ultimately changes the fate of an apex predator facing conditions unlike those experienced by its ancestors. The rocks preserve endings with remarkable clarity, yet they cannot record futures that have not yet become stone. Far from museums and fossil cliffs, the story continues beneath living water. Somewhere across the Pacific Ocean, beneath a sky filled with familiar stars, a family of orcas moves through darkness together. Their voices travel for miles beneath the waves, weaving patterns that remain largely hidden from human ears. Young calves remain close beside experienced adults, absorbing movements, timing, and traditions refined through many generations. Every successful hunt carries lessons inherited from mothers, grandmothers, and those that came long before them. Their lives belong to a narrative that began roughly 500 million years ago, when an unfamiliar hunter drifted through a warm Cambrian sea and captured prey with structures unlike anything alive today. From that distant beginning emerged armored fishes, giant cephalopods, marine reptiles, colossal sharks, ancient whales, and finally predators whose greatest weapon became the ability to think together. The continents have shifted again and again while this story unfolded. Oceans opened, narrowed, and merged. Countless coastlines vanished beneath advancing water or rose into mountain ranges. Through every transformation, life continued exploring new possibilities, each generation shaped by the same enduring sea. Our own moment occupies only a brief passage within that immense chronology. The ocean was ancient before humanity arrived, and it will remain ancient long after countless future tides have erased every trace of the present shoreline. Its story continues, one current joining another, one generation yielding to the next, each chapter carried forward by water that has never truly stopped moving.